Chapter 464. Li Hongyuan glanced at her and didn't say anything. Jingwan got up and let the maidservant dress her. And now this person was going to replace Qingzhu and the others. She was 15 years old, but her skills in dressing and doing makeup were quite good. However, at this age she could stay by her side for at most 3 years before she got married. If she hadn't prepared these people before she got married and didn't enter the prince's mansion to further train them until she returned from Jiangnan, Jingwan would have suspected that this person was selected by someone who didn't want outsiders to stay by her side for too long. However, there were advantages to being a little older. If she was too young, Jingwan would feel guilty when she ordered her around. Jingwan's eyes were half closed. Her thoughts were still on Li Hongyuan. Sometimes she even suspected that a certain someone's IQ ate up his EQ. That was why his IQ was so high and he was always online. However, his EQ was so low that he attracted hatred all over the world. However, even if he attracted hatred, it didn't affect him at all. More often than not, he had to make others retreat. In addition, he used all kinds of tricks on her. Could you say that his EQ was low? It was completely impossible. His EQ was obviously off the charts. This was a combination of the right time, place and people. Even the emperor couldn't be as casual as him. However, Jingwan didn't think that this opportunity fell from the sky for no reason. For today her husband had done so much behind her back. Just thinking about it made her heart ache. Jingwan wasn't a person who reminisced about the past. At this moment she wanted to know about his past. It was a pity that she wasn't involved in that period of time. Who knew that many years before they met she was also a part of his life, a very important part. After preparing, Li Hongyuan found that the way his wife looked at him seemed to have changed a little. Made him a little confused. It was said that a woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the sea. Looking at it now, his wife was no exception. Jingwan also didn't know Li Hongyuan's thoughts. Otherwise she would have been angered to death. She was emotional once and he could slap her into pieces in seconds. Was this called high EQ? It was obviously so low that it had no boundaries. Fortunately, Li Hongyuan would never say this kind of thing. Therefore his EQ was definitely online. After preparing, Li Hongyuan held Jingwan's hand. The two walked side by side, unhurriedly in the direction of the theater. Along the way Jingwan smiled from beginning to end. Her eyes were basically on Li Hongyuan. Li Hongyuan's expression was a little lazy. It seemed that he didn't respond to Jingwan. However, from time to time he gently pulled or put his arm around her shoulder. Therefore Jingwan, who didn't look at the road, walked steadily all the way. She didn't bump into anything. From here the theater where the female guests were placed was closer. Although they weren't seated, Li Hongyuan still sent Jingwan in. He stroked her hair that wasn't messy at all and gently tidied her clothes that weren't messy at all. He whispered a few words to her. He might not have noticed it himself, but in the eyes of others, it was really gentle and affectionate. The restlessness that had been calmed down became more and more intense at this moment. Li Hongyuan lowered his head and kissed Jingwan's forehead. Jingwan hurriedly retreated and looked around like a thief. She seemed to reach out and smack him in a fit of anger. She seemed to grumble. At the same time, in the eyes of others, Fin Min was surprised and shy. He was still pretending. Everyone said that Jin Qinhuang Fei was a person who was used to pretending. It was true. She gritted her teeth and pulled at her handkerchief. She wanted to tear Jingwan apart and replace her. This kind of ugly behavior was clearly seen by those who weren't blind. As the elders, they really wanted to find a hole to crawl into. It was really too embarrassing. Of course, this was only one aspect. There were a few women who didn't even control their emotions and completely fell into the eyes of their mother-in-law. As a mother, how could she allow her son to be cuckolded by her daughter-in-law? Her eyes were like they were dipped in poison. Slut, not abiding by a woman's virtue, these kinds of words were the lightest. Also, even if they were angry, they couldn't blame it on Li Hongyuan. He didn't seduce them. He just treated his wife very normally. This was also his own territory. No one had a reason to criticize him. These people, when they went back, they didn't know how they would be dealt with. It was a pity that these young ladies and daughters-in-law didn't know anything at this time. They were completely attracted by Li Hongyuan. As for Jingwan, haha, that was because she automatically replaced Jingwan's face with her own in her mind. Jingwan urged twice. Only then did Li Hongyuan leave. He didn't forget to remind Jingwan's servant girl. He was in a good mood. Jingwan's smile naturally couldn't fade. It was just that when she approached she couldn't help but stop. What happened? She was just drunk for a while. What happened? Why was there such a strong resentment? Not to mention the scene of Jingwan and Li Hongyuan getting along. Jingwan's current complexion didn't show any discomfort after being drunk at all. Her white skin was tinged with red. The corners of her eyes were a foxy color, as if they had been ruthlessly moistened. How could it not make some people who couldn't get resentment to the sky? If Jingwan knew, she would definitely cry out that she was wronged. Because she knew Li Hongyuan's nature, even if Jingwan was unusually happy in her heart, she didn't dare to take the initiative to kiss him. If she kissed him, she was afraid that she really couldn't leave the room. It could only be said that the malice was too strong and the resentment was too deep. Naturally, he would imagine something unusual. Jingwan remained calm and went upstairs. The atmosphere here was normal. Well, maybe she would soon know the reason for the abnormality downstairs. Jingwan greeted everyone with a sweet smile. She apologized for leaving the banquet in advance. If she didn't treat them well, please forgive her. Obviously, this kind of thing was quite normal. Besides, there was really nothing wrong with the things prepared by Prince Jin's mansion this time. Thinking of Prince Jin's attitude towards her, he wouldn't say anything. Because of her identity, she naturally couldn't go to Sun Yijiao and the others now. Therefore, it was destined that she couldn't talk to her former best friend today. Great Elder Princess waved her hand and asked Jingwan to sit beside her. Jingwan didn't refuse and sat beside Great Elder Princess peacefully. Jingwan originally thought that her foster mother would say something to her. However, Great Elder Princess just watched the play carefully and asked Jingwan to sit beside her. It seemed that she just didn't have a place for Jingwan to sit. In this case, Jingwan could only feel helpless. However, she was not very curious about what happened next. Therefore, it didn't matter whether she knew it now or not. Even if she didn't know it in the end, it could only mean that it was not important. If it was important, she would definitely know it sooner or later. Because they were domestic performers, many of the later plays were actually arranged according to Jingwan's taste. After all, it was their duty to please their masters. Therefore, Jingwan was a little more interested in the play today. She felt that it was not bad and didn't notice the reason behind it for a while. However, for people like Great Elder Princess who liked to listen to plays more often, it was quite obvious. She tilted her head and asked, "Jing, do you often listen to plays in the mansion?" Jingwan didn't know why, but it seemed that there was no need to hide it. She nodded and said, "Not often, but I've heard it several times after I came back from the south of the Yangtze River. After all, sometimes it's quite boring and I have to find something to kill time." Great Elder Princess nodded and asked, "What about your husband? Does he often listen to plays?" At this time, Jingwan hesitated for a moment and said, "When I listen to plays, he is almost always there." Great Elder Princess looked at Jingwan meaningfully and continued to listen to the play. These plays are arranged well. In fact, Jingwan was a little confused by Great Elder Princess's look. She still didn't know what she was up to. However, she knew that as her foster mother she didn't mean any harm. She also thought that what she did was right. "In fact, I don't know much about plays. Foster mother, if you think it's good when you want to listen to it, you can tell me a sentence. I'll ask the troupe to sing it for you in your mansion." "Okay, I'll have a chance in the future." Great Elder Princess didn't refuse. After all, she had a special relationship with Jingwan. If they were too distant, it would obviously be too much. The boundary didn't need to be clearly drawn all the time. In the second half of the play, Moonin came to Jingwan and said, "Your Highness, His Highness has promised to exchange the two troops. Now it's almost time. Do you think?" Li Hongyuan didn't mention it to her before, but since it was her husband's decision, it wasn't a big deal, so Jingwan naturally wouldn't disobey. But who suggested it? In Jingwan's opinion, it was definitely not her husband who suggested it. "It's the other princes." Jingwan understood and said, "I see. In that case, let's change it." Well, there was no need to ask for others' opinions. Anyway, these women usually watched the male troops. After all, they were not raised by their families. Every time they watched a play, there would be a lot of people. The troops were never allowed to walk around, so there were not so many taboos. In fact, there was even no physical wall between the two courtyards. The performers put on makeup and changed their costumes in the same place, but there was a partition in the middle. In this way, it was very simple to change the costumes. They didn't even need to disturb the people watching the play. In the next place, a group of performers would go on the stage. It was very simple. After the change, many people didn't even find the difference. They just thought that the performers on the stage were probably another group. Of course, the gluttons of operas could still tell at a glance. About half of the first song after the change, they suddenly found that the male guest side seemed to be more and more enthusiastic. It was so noisy that it even affected this side. It was so quiet before and basically had nothing to do with each other. Some people felt strange. What were these men excited about? Weren't they the same? Was it possible that the two sides' operas were very different, and the male guest side was particularly wonderful? In this way, someone joked with Jingwon, "Are Prince Jean and Princess Yu favoring one and discriminating against the other?" Jingwon really didn't know how to answer this question. How should she say it? She couldn't directly say that those men were naturally excited when they saw beautiful women, right? She said so she would be criticized. Jingwon had scruples, but Great Elder Princess didn't have any scruples at all. It's not to the extent of favoring one and discriminating against the other. It's just that men's bad habits are triggered. It's normal for their eyes to light up when they see beautiful women. Some people still didn't understand, but after being reminded by the people around them, they understood in an instant. They all shut their mouths and didn't want to ask anything. After all, the male guests had their husbands. Women always hated their husbands for being lecherous, but for their sons they were always worried that there wouldn't be enough people to serve them. They were always so loyal to both sides. They complained about Jingwon in their hearts, but they also didn't dare to say anything. These people's reactions were reasonable. Jingwon was very calm and didn't care at all. No matter how those people praised, they could only enjoy their eyes. It was absolutely impossible for them to touch and eat. Great Elder Princess patted Jingwon's hand and said, "Don't worry about them. Men have bad habits, but women also have bad habits. The root of women's bad habits is that they know it's their men's problem, but they have to blame others and think that it's the outside vixens who seduced them and forced themselves to become resentful women. As the saying goes, it takes two to clap. If it's not the men who have bad thoughts, how can the women outside cling on to them?" Great Elder Princess said and sneered. Jingwon was a little surprised by Great Elder Princess's words, but it was reasonable after thinking about it. After all, no matter what kind of environment and background people were in, there would always be some outliers. If everyone's thoughts were the same, then there would be no ups and downs in the long river of history. Jingwon smiled. It was always more pleasant to get along with people who could resonate with her thoughts. Great Elder Princess didn't suppress her voice at all, so there were many people who heard her words. However, at least 9 out of 10 of these people were successful in cultivation. It was even the most basic thing that they couldn't express their emotions. Therefore, even if they were flustered in their hearts, they could still smile decently on the surface. When it was finally time to leave, most of the afternoon had passed and most people basically chose to leave at this time. When they left, there were not many people who needed Jingwon's help, but there were also quite a few. However, when some young ladies talked to Jingwon always felt that they were a little sarcastic. Otherwise, they would look at her with hidden bitterness, as if she had done something very wrong to them. Jingwon couldn't help but have goosebumps all over her body. Then she saw their elders frowning at them and apologizing to Jingwon with a smile, asking her not to mind and so on. Jingwon was still at a loss. She could only make perfunctory noises. Then she recalled the incident at the opera house. She had forgotten about it. Now that she looked at it again, it was necessary for her to have a deeper understanding of it. She didn't want to ask others, but she could ask Nanny Gong. Firstly, Nanny Gong wouldn't hide it from her. Secondly, she had been here all the time, so she knew everything clearly. Nanny Gong told her everything in detail. After listening, Jingwon fell into a state of speechlessness for a while. Then she cursed in her heart. "Your mother, what was this?" Ever since she married a certain person, that certain person's peach blossoms had basically never stopped. However, there was a premise, and that was that those people didn't know anything about the living king of hell. They only knew that he looked good and had a noble status, but they didn't know anything about his nature. Moreover, those peach blossoms bloomed one by one, unlike this time where a large cluster bloomed all at once. Jingwon felt that perhaps this was just the beginning, and there were more and more lively things to come. It was said that Jin Qinhuang was dissolute and fond of beauty. In the past, the beauties by his side never stopped. However, after Jingwon came to the capital, the gossip about that certain person seemed to be from before she came to the capital. Even if he stopped releasing rumors at that time, it had been almost 2 years. After such a long time of fermentation, even a slow-witted person would have reacted. And today, his gentleness and consideration towards her became the fuse that completely blew up this matter. Jin Qinhuang cursed his wife, but wasn't she fine now? Moreover, he didn't say anything about cursing his concubines. With her at the front, what were they afraid of? Li Hongyuan didn't have a tsifei or concubines, but he was a Qinhuang. He had countless wealth and even more, he had unfailing imperial favor. Even if he had a group of wives and concubines, it was a matter of course for people to think about him. Now they were all gathered together. Even if Jingwan knew that he wouldn't have anyone else by his side, at least before he no longer loved her, it would be like this. And Jingwan was willing to believe that he would love her for a lifetime, so there was no need to worry about this problem. Jingwan's heart was still a little stingy. No matter who encountered this kind of thing, they wouldn't be happy. Those who stayed until the end were basically those closest to Jingwan. Because of the limitations of their status, those who couldn't talk to Jingwan before could now say a few words. Seeing that Jingwan's mood was a little strange, they naturally had to ask. Jingwan was very helpless. What else is there? My husband is too charming, attracting bees and butterflies, peach blossoms everywhere. Ah. Sun Yijia and Yuan Qiao very unkindly covered their mouths and laughed. Hey, that's enough. Don't be like this. Jingwan only felt her hands itch and wanted to pinch them. Isn't this Jin Qinhuang's matter? What are you worried about? Whether he rejects or accepts, it's all up to him. When that time comes, you can decide what to do. Sun Yijia said very straightforwardly. Jingwan chuckled. This matter can only have one result. Looking at your expression, I already know what the result will be. Then what else is there to say? It's purely a person worrying over nothing. Sun Yijia gracefully gave Jingwan a supercilious look. Yuan Qiao also laughed mischievously. That's right, you should listen to cousin-in-law. After all, cousin-in-law has a lot of experience in this area. That's right, the peach blossoms that bloomed outside of Luo Jingbo might not be as good as Li Hongyuan's in terms of quality, but the quantity was definitely far superior. Every time they went out, they would encounter some kind of situation. Moreover, without the lethality of the King of Hell, it could be said that those people simply had no way of stopping them. Sun Yijia had long been calm about this kind of thing and even specially prepared a box for her husband to bring back those things that were accidentally left on him. Moreover, they couldn't be found from the original owner of the body. There was no need to secretly deal with them. Now it was almost filled to the brim. Sun Yijia was quite used to this kind of thing and was even able to deal with those people who directly came to find her. Jingwan didn't really care about it in the first place. Now all the gloominess in this life had disappeared. However, she secretly warned herself in her heart that she had to appear very angry in front of a certain someone. Otherwise, according to that certain someone's character, he might think that she didn't care about him, and then his illness would act up and destroy her in a second. As for hiding it from him, it was unrealistic. She could hide it from him, but those people outside would also try their best to get close to him. When they were almost done talking, Great Elder Princess Madame Luo and the others came over. Sun Yijia and Yuan Qiao hurriedly bowed to them. Great Elder Princess nodded and held them up slightly. Get up. Her eyes lingered on Sun Yijia for a moment. Yijia, you look good now. You are much more popular than before. Sun Yijia smiled. Great Elder Princess, you're right. I'm really living a good life now. It's good. Just live a good life in the future and don't think too much about other things. Yes. Great Elder Princess's eyes fell on Jingwan again. You know all about it? Jingwan smiled and nodded. Yes. Don't you have any thoughts? Great Elder Princess teased Jingwan with a little interest. I don't have such thoughts. It's just that I should be the one who should be angry when they covet my husband. Each and every one of them acted as if I had stolen their husband and treated me like a vixen. No matter how I think about it, it's a little strange, isn't it? Or I can't keep up with those people's thoughts. Now that I think about it, it feels like they are all wearing fashionable clothes, but I'm still wearing the clothes from 3 years ago. Jingwan said with a smile. The others also laughed. Great Elder Princess touched Jingwan's forehead modestly. You are so mischievous. You're an outsider and they're locals in the capital. You stole them. Sun Yijia said with disdain. There's no time to force things in life. Those people are all at a dead end. If they were clear-headed, they wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Just wait and see. Those who were unhappy before will be even more unhappy when they go back today. They will suffer a lot before they know what's good for them. These people don't care about them, but I'm afraid that if they meet those who love their daughters, they will directly beg my brother. You're the only one in Hong Yuan's backyard. If they really ask my brother, he won't refuse. Great elder princess reminded her. Foster mother, don't worry. Father won't refuse, provided that the Lord agrees. We all know what kind of person the Lord is. If he doesn't agree, he will still refuse the people sent by my father. Seeing that Jingwan was so confident, Great elder princess seemed to understand something. Maybe this is your luck. Jingwan smiled and didn't say anything. In her heart she was sure that maybe God really favored her. Of course, one day in the future when Jingwan knew the whole truth, she probably wouldn't think so. Her luck was not because of God but because of him. Well, as long as you know it in your heart, I'll go back first. Then Yu Yao, who had been depressed since the death of the little tiger, came to find her. Yu Yao, foster mother has agreed to let you raise the little tiger and the little lion. Can you take them back directly? Yu Yao shook her head. Cousin-in-law, I don't want to raise them. I just took care of the little tiger for a while and it died. I may not be able to raise it well. I don't want anything to happen to the little tiger and the little lion. Jingwan touched her head. It's not Yu Yao's fault, and it's not that I didn't take good care of them. I believe that Yu Yao will be able to raise them well. Besides, if you raise them in Great Elder Princess's mansion, what happened today will never happen again. Yu Yao was a little hesitant. Then, can I come back to pick them up later? Was she worried that when she saw them she would think of the dead one? No, I can't. After being raised by me for a while, they will be familiar with my aura. If I take them back, they won't be familiar with me and it will be difficult for them to be close to me. Take them back. I'll help you raise them together. Great Elder Princess didn't want her daughter to be depressed. Although it was more likely that she would think of something when she saw it. If she had something to do, she could distract her attention and the sadness would go away faster. In this way, Yu Yao didn't hesitate anymore. However, she didn't expect that what she took away in the end was the body of the little tiger. After Great Elder Princess was sent away except for Yuan Xiao Xiao, the rest were all members of the Luo family. Jingwan didn't need to ask whether there were any male guests left, because the Luo family wouldn't stay for too long. Jingwan naturally seized the time to learn about the situation of the Luo family. First of all, the concubine's younger sister's marriage had basically been settled, which was Xie Renhui. As for the younger sister, she was far from being old enough. When they talked about marriage, the overall situation might have been settled, then they would have better choices. Among the siblings of this generation, the second son of the eldest branch was born by a concubine. He was the same age as Jingwan but a little younger than Jingwan. He was also 16 this year. However, as a man, it didn't matter if he didn't get married. Although there were many people who wanted to settle down because of the good situation in the Luo family now, the Luo family insisted. Later they learned that the younger Madame Wang was pregnant again. It hadn't been long since she was diagnosed, so her cousin and the members of the first branch were very happy. Jingwan was not so optimistic, mainly because she was worried that the child would be unwell when her cousin got married. However, it was a happy event, so Jingwan couldn't dampen their spirits. She just smoothly changed the topic to the third branch. Luo Rongping was paralyzed and could only lie in bed for the rest of his life. Madame Lu was calmer now and took care of him more carefully. Luo Rongping finally accepted the reality and no longer made trouble. It was much better than the beginning when he was paralyzed. Then there was Luo Jingying. Well, it was Luo Xing's birthday now. Tomorrow was her 16th birthday. It was just that she was sitting in front of a lamp and sitting in front of a statue of Buddha. She didn't want to come out of it herself, but there was nothing she could do. But looking at Madame Lu's expression, she should be getting better. By the time Li Hongyuan came over, the Luo family had already taken their leave. Jingwan was a little resentful of someone who drove away her family. She stared at Li Hongyuan faintly. What's wrong? Do you have something to say to your husband? Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan with a seductive smile. However, this smile didn't charm Jingwan. Instead, it woke Jingwan up immediately. The expression on her face became more and more unpleasant. She even reached out and poked Li Hongyuan's chest. Tell me, why do you seduce women all day long? Jingwan praised herself for her wit in her heart. However, Li Hongyuan looked at her suspiciously. What do you mean by that? When did it happen? You don't know? Jingwan's resentment deepened. Well, Wanwan told me clearly and I knew. Li Hongyuan calmly held her hand. Then Jingwan angrily scolded him about the peach blossoms outside. Li Hongyuan was not affected by her mood. On the contrary, he looked at the expression on her face with great interest. When Jingwan finished speaking, he reached out and pinched her face. Wan, do you know what you're pretending to be in front of your husband? Jingwan's expression was slightly cracked. She thought that her acting had always been good. However, seeing that you're working so hard to please your husband, I'll be generous and let it go since you don't care about it. Perhaps it was because it felt too good he couldn't help but pinch it again. Hey, if you want to deceive your husband you still need to practice more. However, when one day Wan can deceive your husband, I believe that there's no one in the world that Wan can't deceive. Work hard, your husband is optimistic about you. Jingwan was really depressed this time. What are you talking about? She pinched Li Hongyuan's waist. Unfortunately, not only were they separated by clothes, but because his flesh was too hard she couldn't pinch him at all. Alright, Jingwan also knew that because her mentality was different, and because she didn't want to deceive him at all, her acting naturally couldn't deceive him. Li Hongyuan smiled and didn't continue to pester her on this matter. In a few days, let's go to the farmstead and stay for a while. We'll stay there until we don't want to. Speaking of the farmstead, Jingwan suddenly remembered something that she had forgotten. Has the horse farm been built? You only remembered it now? It was built long ago. In addition, the rare animals garden has also been built. Compared to the animals in the mansion, those are all adults and not limited to the animals on the ground. There are many animals that fly in the sky and swim in the water. Jingwan looked at Li Hongyuan and was sure that he wasn't joking. She resisted the urge to hold her forehead. This man was really every time he played big. According to his words, it was not as simple as a zoo. At present, the cost of building such a garden was absolutely beyond imagination. Jingwan felt that Emperor Lu Qingdi, who indulged him in every way, would scold him for being extravagant after knowing this matter. And those courtiers who turned a blind eye to him might want to criticize him. Can't you take it easy? Take it easy? What's that? Jingwan was once again defeated by this capricious and overbearing man. However, it was already built, could it be torn down? That would be a true waste of natural resources. That would be a shameful waste that could not be tolerated. Alright, it's already built. If I don't take a closer look and play around, I really would be letting myself down. In any case, she was being led by a certain person to live extravagant days, so she shouldn't think about poor days. There was still some time before the sun set in the west. Jingwan pulled Li Hongyuan and prepared to rest. She had been drunk at the banquet. Her mind might be good, but her body was faintly resisting. Halfway back to the main yard, a message came from the front. He Zhihai and young general he had come with gifts to congratulate Wang Fei on her birthday. Today's banquet naturally included the He family. He Zhihai was not present. Before this, there was no news of him returning to Jing. So he came to visit as soon as he came back? Li Hongyuan watched as Jingwan walked back. Are you going to see him? Wang Ye doesn't want me to see him? Jingwan smiled faintly. If Wang Ye doesn't want me to see him, then I won't see him. Li Hongyuan clicked his tongue. He was quite assured that Jingwan would see He Zhihai. That boy definitely wouldn't have any thoughts about Wan. He Zhihai was covered in wind and frost. He brought a few soldiers with him. From the looks of it, he hadn't returned to the He family and came to Jin Wangfu first. Although He Zhihai was an official now, his old man still didn't give him the right to lead troops. True New Mountains troops were already crippled this time. Therefore He Jinwei also submitted a request to return to Jing. He Zhihai wasn't restricted by anything for the time being. Therefore he came back very quickly and no one knew. He Zhihai looked the same as when he left Jing. After all, it was only 2 months, so there wasn't much change. However, those who had come into contact with him before and after would keenly discover that he was different. This kind of change might not be obvious normally, but once he was on the battlefield he would gradually evolve into a war god. This was what Li Hongyuan wanted. Therefore he was naturally satisfied with He Zhihai's change. After He Zhihai gave his greetings, he casually took out the gift prepared for Jingwan. In an iron cage there was a snow-white fox. Whether it was the appearance or the smell, it all showed that this fox was a fragrant fox. It was similar in size to the one that Li Hongyuan gave to Jingwan. He Zhihai didn't know Jingwan's birthday, but this was indeed a gift for Jingwan. As a fan of Jin Wangfu, he didn't know what to give to Li Hongyuan. He inadvertently obtained this fragrant fox and decided to flatter Jin Wangfei in a roundabout way. Husband and wife were one body, so it was the same to flatter either one. On this point He Jihai hit the mark by a fluke. After all, the number of husband and wife who weren't one body was far greater than the number of husband and wife who were one body. It was just that this fragrant fox didn't look too good. He Jihai put the cage on the table and scratched his head. The journey was a bit fast, so it doesn't seem to be very good. There shouldn't be any problems, right? He said uncertainly. These things are delicate. Jingwan couldn't help but twitch the corner of her mouth. What kind of little overlord was this? This was clearly an idiot. Who would give a sickly animal as a gift? Especially when the other party's status was far higher than their own. This wasn't giving a gift, this was a curse. If it was another person, 8 or 9 out of 10 people would think that you had malicious intentions. If your intentions were murderous, maybe they would kill you in minutes. How big was this little overlord's heart that he would send this in front of the living king of hell? Li Hongyuan's face really was a bit dark, especially when this was something that was given to his wife. Jingwan covered the corner of her mouth and hurriedly called for the person who specialized in looking after the fragrant fox to come over and see the specific situation of this little thing. She hoped that it was all right. Otherwise He Jihai would definitely suffer. The person came quickly. After a careful examination there was no big problem. It would be fine after a period of time. According to the person who raised the fox, the vitality of the fragrant fox was much stronger than people imagined. Jingwan's heart calmed down a bit. This idiot. Li Hongyuan's expression also calmed down, but it didn't mean that he was completely calm. He stood up. Martial arts practice field, I want to see whether your martial arts have improved or not. Although he said it in such a dignified way, it didn't change the fact that he wanted to teach He Jihai a lesson. He Jihai was immediately excited as if his whole body was burning. Jingwan's face was paralyzed. Sure enough, he was an idiot. Jingwan stood up slowly. Although she knew that he really didn't have any bad intentions, she didn't mind a Yuan teaching him a lesson. Jingwan went back to the main courtyard to sleep comfortably. The fight between the living king of hell and little overlord he was quite exciting and also quite satisfying. Even though little gangster he was still being suppressed, Li Hongyuan's suppression on him was much weaker than it was at the beginning of the fight. Only Li Hongyuan knew clearly about He Jihai's improvement. Before he left Jing City for the northeast border city, his improvement was obvious. It could only be said that his improvement actually came from his stronger heart. Even though He Jihai was lying on the ground for a long time and couldn't move, he was still very excited. However, he was still thrown out by Li Hongyuan. He Jihai was used to being thrown out. He Jihai didn't feel anything. He didn't want to get up, so he asked the bodyguard to carry him back. He Jihai was carried back to the He family. The He family was scared. The surprise of them coming back early was gone in a flash. What happened? Did something happen on the way back? The bodyguard hurriedly denied and then quickly explained the matter clearly. After listening, Old Madam He and Old Madam He had the same expression. They didn't say anything. They just beat this bastard again. Look at what this bastard did. This kind of person deserved to be beaten to death. When He Jihai was fighting with Li Hongyuan he was very excited. But he didn't say anything. Now he was beaten by his own mother and grandmother. Even though the former felt more pain than the latter. On the other side, Jingwan slept for a while. After she woke up, she was applying medicine for Li Hongyuan. In the past, when she fought with He Jihai, she would get injured from time to time. Although except for the first time there were no obvious injuries. But this time there were more bruises. Jingwan didn't say anything. She applied medicine to his bruises bit by bit. Finally, Jingwan said, "In the future, can you not fight with me anymore?" Although he didn't even blink his eyes, but Jingwan still felt distressed. "Okay," Li Hongyuan answered straightforwardly. Jingwan was a bit speechless. It wasn't the first time she said this. In the past she didn't get this kind of answer. https://11/4/11807/10751271. Himmel. Chapter 465. In the beginning, Li Hongyuan might have been interested in fighting with someone who could make him use his full strength, but after all he wasn't a martial arts fanatic like He Jihai. Based on this point, his original intention was probably just to satisfy the regrets of his previous life. Once, twice, or thrice was the most he could do. The reason why he still fought later was naturally because of the most essential purpose: to train He Jihai. Now, although He Jihai hadn't finished his final form, it was enough. Jingwan was naturally happy that he didn't get injured every once in a while. However, I'm afraid that young master he won't give up so easily. His toughness is obvious to all. Jingwan chuckled. If this prince doesn't accept the challenge, what can he do? Besides, he's no longer a virgin. No matter what the reason is, if he comes into frequent contact with me, it will arouse some people's suspicions. As a good son, I have to be considerate and know when to advance and when to retreat. For him, this prince even gave up one of the few likes, so he should at least give some benefits. Li Hongyuan put on the clothes that Jingwan shook out, and his movements were neither fast nor slow. He Zhihai's progress is godly, faster than expected. Perhaps in a year or so, I won't be his opponent anymore. His temperament is still somewhat unstable. If he doesn't have a goal, he might slack off again. He Zhihai's potential is limitless, and it's unknown how strong he can be. Instead of letting him stagnate after defeating me, it's better to leave him hanging and let him continue to hone himself. Moreover, as long as I'm always stronger than him, I can easily make him obedient, and he won't be like a runaway wild horse that only focuses on martial arts. After a few years, some things will be engraved into his bones and his temperament will also mature. This was a preparation to kill several birds with one stone. Saying so much, isn't it because your highness is worried that you will lose face if you lose? Jingwan teased. Alright, this was purely a joke. Li Hongyuan wasn't someone who didn't have the breadth of mind and temperament. Although this person was narrow-minded and vengeful, that was only towards love rivals and people who weren't on his side. Li Hongyuan tidied up his clothes and looked at Jingwan. Wanwan, what do you think? As long as you're happy. Although he did indulge her in many things and pampered her, this husband follows his wife tone on the surface still made Jingwan extremely speechless. Alright, let's not talk about this topic anymore. It's just that, Yuan has nothing to say about young master he. Although his methods are a bit special, in essence he serves him wholeheartedly. There are many people who work for you and others don't receive this kind of treatment. Young master he can't even be considered one of your subordinates. Wan, you have to know that there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world, especially when it comes to this prince. The more you ask this prince to contribute now, the more you will have to repay in the future. Your husband has never been someone who would work hard without asking for anything in return. He Zhihai needs to be personally trained by this prince, so he should be prepared to be enslaved by this prince for the rest of his life. Therefore it could only be said that he Zhihai was unlucky. Which one of the others wasn't mature enough to do their own jobs? Only he Zhihai, because his talent was too good, and he was someone who could be forced but not cowed by persuasion. Laozi and the others couldn't suppress him, so they couldn't teach him well. He fell into Li Hongyuan's hands and the process of being trained was very painful. Then what about me? If I were to be ranked second in terms of what I got from Prince, no one would dare to be ranked first. So Wan, don't tell me you don't know that you have been reserved by this prince for eternity? Therefore there really wasn't anyone who was an exception. It was different from other people being enslaved. Jingwan was very willing. She happily hugged his waist and leaned on his shoulder. She was reserved by him and correspondingly he was reserved by her. Therefore it wasn't a loss at all. Li Hongyuan naturally reached out and wrapped his arms around her shoulders. One day passed. Jingwan and Li Hongyuan sat down and started to deal with the matter. Because today was not only Jingwan's birthday, but also the day when the imperial noble consort's spiritual altar was to be started. As long as someone didn't give up, they would definitely make trouble. Moreover, they deliberately brought forward the date to today. The spiritual altar closest to the capital was less than 20 miles away. If they wanted to do something, and if they wanted to do something, and if they wanted to do something, and if they wanted to send the news back in time, it was the best place to start. However, Li Hongyuan had already made preparations. How could he let something unpleasant happen? Therefore, according to the news sent back, the heaven and earth ceremony was held before the start of the spiritual altar, and everything else was ready. Although the sudden collapse of the foundation didn't cause any casualties, it was definitely not a good sign. This matter was quickly reported to Lu Qingdi. Of course, Lu Qingdi was unhappy. His heart was beating like a drum. However, thinking that Momo was the goddess of mystery who had descended to the mortal world, Lu Qingdi gritted his teeth and ordered them to continue. There was no stopping. The spiritual altar must be completed on time. After receiving the order, the craftsmen had to clean the site. When the foundation collapsed, it was only a matter of seconds. However, it took a few hours to clean it up. However, at the end of the cleaning they found something underneath. At first, the craftsman thought of the stone tablet that was exposed after the collapse of the Shishan barracks. Could it be that this was something similar? They swept away the initial haze and sped up the cleaning. However, they became more careful. In the end, the thing was dug out. However, it wasn't a stone tablet. However, in terms of value, it was more significant to a country than a stone tablet. Because it was a wine cauldron. Although most of the people present were craftsmen, there were also officials from the Ministry of Works and a group of imperial guards present. There were many knowledgeable people who immediately recognized that it was one of the 9 cauldrons. The 9 cauldrons, to a certain extent, could be regarded as the true symbol of the country. After all, it represented the supremacy of the royal power and the unification of the country. If someone were to rebel with the 9 cauldrons, then regardless of whether the person sitting on the throne was a wise ruler or not, regardless of whether the weather was favorable, there would definitely be a lot of people who would raise the flag of rebellion. This was because the person sitting on the throne would be regarded as unjustified. Since he was an impostor, he should naturally be removed from the throne. However, the 9 cauldrons had disappeared for thousands of years. They hadn't appeared for several dynasties. However, it appeared now. What did this mean? It meant that Qi Yuan was going to rise. It was a great auspicious sign. Originally, the former Wei still said that they were the orthodox and that Qi Yuan was a thief like the former dynasty, but now that this cauldron was thrown out without a single word of nonsense, it could make them speechless and could even change the positions of the 2 countries. How could they not be excited? Lu Qingdi was also waiting for something to happen. However, he didn't expect that he would be waiting for such a good thing. When he heard the news, he was so excited that he couldn't control himself. He immediately ordered someone to send the cauldron back to the palace. As he was worried, he even asked Yu Zhongqing to go personally. While waiting, he couldn't sit still and paced back and forth in the imperial study. Suddenly, he thought of something and hurried back to his bedroom. He took out the portrait of the imperial noble consort that he had carefully kept. Hua 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 hua, you really are. At this moment, Lu Qingdi no longer had any doubts about the imperial noble consort's identity. Lu Qingdi was even narcissistic enough to think that the imperial noble consort came for him. Moreover, she had such deep feelings for him. Because the locations of the spiritual altars were not prosperous places, no one would excavate them unless it was a special situation. As such, no one would know what was buried underneath. This time it was excavated because of the imperial noble consort, allowing one of the 9 cauldrons to see the light of day again. Needless to say, this was already the best proof. Regarding this matter, no one would raise any objections. Those who tried to tamper with it in vain would have to consider the consequences if they were discovered. In front of the country, even one's own son could only step aside. Therefore, even if Lu Qingdi valued one of his sons, if he knew that one of his sons was causing trouble, he would definitely slap him to death without mercy. In a lighter case, he might be demoted to a commoner. In a more serious case, he would directly lose his life. At this time, even if he killed his son, he probably wouldn't think that Lu Qingdi was unkind. At this moment, the cauldron had been sent to the palace. It was obvious that this matter was not small. However, to some people it was still a small matter. Therefore, it could be said that the entire capital was in an uproar. Only Jingwan knew about it now. Jingwan was slightly surprised. Yuan, aren't you playing a little too big? 9 cauldrons, that thing can be faked? It is not only a national treasure but also a real antique. There must be a lot of people who are interested in it. Even if ordinary people can't get in touch with it, there is no lack of people in the imperial court who are interested in it. If they find out that it is fake, it will inevitably be counterproductive. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan as if looking at a little fool. It's okay if you are stupid, but don't think that your husband is stupid too. Jingwan choked. This man's mouth was getting more and more poisonous. He even treated her like this. It was so infuriating. What, are you still not convinced? Li Hongyuan rubbed Jingwan's head. Jingwan was depressed, but thinking about it carefully, she was indeed stupid. She knew that if it was seen through at a glance, there was no need to play such a self-destructive trick. Therefore, this cauldron, was it that the person who faked it was so clever that no one could see through it, or was it originally one of the 9 cauldrons? Jingwan's heart leaned towards the latter. After all, no matter how clever the method of faking it was, there was no guarantee that it would not be seen through. Therefore, It was just that how did someone get hold of something that had disappeared for thousands of years? And where did he get it from? He did not take it out at all now. In the future it would be even more useful. Jingwan asked the question in her heart. However, Li Hongyuan's gaze towards Jingwan did not change. This attitude made Jingwan really want to strangle him to death. Obviously, Jingwan did not get an answer. This cauldron was indeed real. The bottle that was discovered today was actually not buried by Li Hongyuan. It was originally under the cauldron. Because he knew it was there, Li Hongyuan had designated one of the 81 spell altars. Choosing the location of the spell altars had nothing to do with Li Hongyuan, nor did he participate in it. However, it was very easy to decide one of them. The reason why he knew was because of his previous life. After ascending the throne in his previous life, he spent many years fighting wars. At first it was not very smooth, but later on, it became smoother and smoother. Li Hongyuan had swept through many places. Once he accidentally found one of the 9 cauldrons. It was used as an ordinary cauldron by a declining family. After that, Li Hongyuan intentionally or unintentionally searched for the whereabouts of the 9 cauldrons. Of course, he did not spend too much effort. He actually did not believe that the 9 cauldrons would do anything just because he had obtained them. However, he did not want them to fall into the hands of others. He did not know if the 9 cauldrons had really reached the time of their birth. With an attitude that they were dispensable, Li Hongyuan actually found the whereabouts of all the cauldrons in the end. He did not care what methods he used to get them all. Actually, the bottle that appeared now was the most difficult to find. It was also the last to be found. In this life he made good use of it. As for when he took it out in the future to consolidate his position, it did not matter. It was just one bottle. In his previous life he was able to get all the cauldrons without knowing it. How could it escape from his hands in this life? Even if there was an accident and it was found by someone else, he could still get it back. In fact, 4 of the 9 cauldrons were in Qiyuan, and the other 5 were in other countries. As for the 4 cauldrons in Qiyuan, except for the one buried in the ground, the other 3 were already in Li Hongyuan's pocket. It was worth mentioning that when he was on the throne in his previous life, he did not let the 9 cauldrons appear in the world. Instead, he left them to his son. Although he tried his best to cultivate his son and left behind many capable and important officials, his image as a tyrant was deeply rooted in people's hearts. He was worried that after his death his son would not be able to control him. With the 9 cauldrons in his hands it would be different. After all, in his eyes the 9 cauldrons were just 9 cauldrons. However, the world did not see it that way. It was not the time to tell this to Wan Wan. In fact, sometimes she clearly had doubts, but she stopped her investigation time and time again. Occasionally she would look forward to finding out something and ask. Then he did not mind telling her some things in advance. Unfortunately, in fact, as Jingwan said, there were too many evil people who were interested in the cauldrons. When they heard the news, even if it was not early, it was convenient for them to enter the palace, so they all hurriedly entered the palace. He believed that when the news spread, scholars from all over the country who were interested in antiques would rush to the capital. Even if they knew that the chances of seeing the 9 cauldrons were slim, they would not give up. They would use all the methods that they disdained to use in the past as long as there was a chance to see it. Your Majesty, there are a total of 81 altars built for the imperial noble consort. Will there be other cauldrons in other places? The number of altars is not any other number, but the number of altars is 9 by 9. Originally it was not very suitable for the imperial Gui Fei, but because it was Master Liaochen no one questioned it. Now that I think about it, could it be that it coincides with the meaning of the 9 cauldrons? A cabinet scholar was a fanatic in this area. At this moment he was so excited that he came up with such a bold guess. It sounded a little ridiculous, but there was no strong evidence to refute it. Perhaps it was so. Lu Qingdi's eyes also flashed. If he could really gather all the 9 cauldrons, he would definitely leave a deep mark in history. No emperor could refuse such a thing. Without saying anything, he immediately sent out the blackguards overnight to rush to various places. Although he might be disappointed that there were no other cauldrons, it was also good to supervise the construction of the altars to ensure that nothing went wrong and that the imperial noble consort's ritual could be carried out smoothly. Now, not to mention Lu Qingdi, even the officials in the court hoped that this matter could be done perfectly. However, there were many people who were happy, but there were also many who were unhappy, or even more. Other things aside, the better this matter was, the more benefits would be Li Hongyuan. As for the others, Imperial noble consort Su might be able to gain some benefits. However, she was estranged from Li Hongyuan and was disliked by Lu Qingdi. Coupled with the matter of Princess Minxiang, she had not seen Lu Qingdi for a long time. Li Hongyuan had already made them afraid. At that time he was not a fundamental threat. Now it was completely different. If this continued, it was hard to guarantee that he would not be a real threat. Once Li Hongyuan got involved, it could be said that they basically had nothing to do with it. Therefore many people smashed their cups and flipped their tables. After all, according to the arrangement, the collapse would not have happened. It was completely planned. If 2 more people were killed, then the altar would be affected even if it was not affected. Because they did not know the reason, everyone would be suspicious and guess the reason. The craftsmen did not dare to continue because they were afraid of death. The imperial noble consort would also be questioned again. In the end, no one died and a cauldron appeared. It was fine if it was an ordinary cauldron, but it was one of the 9 cauldrons. For example, at this moment in Prince Rue's residence, the people who served Prince Rue wanted to find a hole to hide in and disappear completely. It was no wonder that Li Hongming had the biggest reaction. In fact, he was very worried now. Since New Year's Eve, he realized that there had been no good news in his residence for a long time. Originally, he was not very anxious about having an heir. He thought that as long as he could have one, there would be no problem. But what if he could not have one? What if his imperial father found out? Then he could be 100% sure that he would have no chance to be the emperor. No one would be assured to give the throne to a person who was destined to have no heir. With such suspicions, the doctor in Li Hongyuan's manor checked his pulse, and the result was that there was no problem. However, even so, he was still worried. He urgently needed a child. He urgently needed a child to prove himself. As long as someone in the harem was pregnant, no matter if it was a Wang Fei, a concubine, or a concubine, it would prove that there was no problem with him. The reason why he did not think that it was the women's problem was that they had been pregnant from time to time. The princess had even given birth. It was impossible that all of them had problems. If 1 or 2 pieces of land did not grow seedlings, it might be the problem of the land. But if all the land did not grow seedlings, it was more likely that there was a problem with the seeds. After all, the seeds were the same even though the land was different. In the name of concern, Li Hongming asked people to check the pulse of every woman in his harem. Except for a few who had a cold womb, the rest were all fine. In this way, even if Li Hongming did not want to admit it, he knew that if there was really a problem, it was very likely that it was his own body. Although the doctor did not find the problem, once a person like him had doubts, unless it could be completely dispelled, it would be like a thorn in his heart, scratching his heart and lungs. Therefore, during this period, Li Hongming, who had never been greedy, had been a stud horse almost every day. Even if his eyes were black, his legs were weak, and he drank bowl after bowl of tonics, he still continued. He asked the nannies around him to schedule the periods when the women in his harem were easy to get pregnant. He slept with them one by one, including the concubines who he did not want to take care of. Moreover, he also reached out to those maids who looked good as long as they were not too bad looking. To this extent, he still felt that it was not enough. He suspected that his princess had done something in the harem in the past and had raised 2 outside. Because Li Hongming had always maintained a good reputation in the outside world, he was very careful in doing this. He knew very well that once it was known, his image would be ruined and it would be very bad for him. For example, if a bad person did an ordinary bad thing, others might not even blink. But if a good person did the same thing, it might cause a huge wave and be condemned by everyone. Therefore, a good reputation was a sharp weapon but also a shackle. Li Hongming hid it from the outside world, but he was not so strict with his family, especially in front of his princess. Could be said that he almost said it out loud. It showed that he really trusted Princess Lu very much. However, to give her trust, it was natural for her to do things for him, but he did not give her much in return. Most of the time he did not even say a word. In his heart, it was probably a great gift for Lady Lu to be his princess. She should treat him as her everything and do everything for him. Even if husband and wife were not one, they were a community of interests. Li Hongming was anxious, and so was Princess Lu. If her husband had no children and had no chance to be the emperor, the consequences would be unimaginable. After all, he had been fighting with his brothers for a long time. There was no way out. If he died, she might be able to live, but she would be imprisoned for the rest of her life, and her children would be. In this way, although she did not say it out loud, Princess Lu was secretly thinking of ways to keep the harem firmly empty. She could not let any negative rumors spread. Although she was very miserable, she still took the initiative to find a woman who could give birth to him. At the same time, she made some warm soup and water. Because she did not know the specific situation, she did not dare to use medicine directly. This tacit understanding lasted for a while. It was only a month and there was no obvious effect. Knowing that, she still could not sit or stand still. Knowing that Li Hongming was more unhappy than before, Princess Lu personally prepared some food and sent it to the study and sent all the servants out. Li Hongming had no appetite, so he ate a few mouthfuls hastily. "Your Highness, why don't we find a doctor to confirm it?" "Confirm? How can we confirm it?" Prince Rui's face was gloomy, and the teacup in his hand was about to be crushed. It was too late to cover up this kind of thing. Once there was any sign of trouble, even if it turned out to be nothing in the end, there would be trouble. It was not impossible to confirm it. There were two ways. First, he let someone he trusted very much to find a doctor. Whether by coercion or bribery, he had to control the doctor. Second, he could hide his identity and find a doctor among the people. Yes, no matter which way he chose, he could not have anything to do with the imperial doctors, even if they were loyal to him. Because it was hard to know what was in a person's heart, and it was difficult for a person like Prince Rui to trust someone wholeheartedly. Take Princess Lu for example. He believed that she would always stand on his side, but he also suspected that she would secretly harm other concubines in his harem. "Should I tell mother?" Princess Lu said with a little difficulty. Prince Rui was silent for a long time, and the atmosphere was almost suffocating. After a full 15 minutes, Prince Rui slowly said, "Go to the palace tomorrow." His voice was a little hoarse. "It's better to confirm it as soon as possible. In case, it's better to be prepared." Princess Lu suddenly reached out and held his hand. Princess Lu, who had always been dignified and virtuous, had done such a thing at the beginning of her marriage. "Your Highness, you have to believe that there won't be any what if." Prince Rui was a little touched at that moment, but it only appeared for a moment and he didn't even notice it. Then he calmed down, withdrew his hand, picked up the teacup and said, Compared to many people who couldn't sleep that night, Jingwan and Li Hongyuan still slept very well. Having an heir might be a problem for Jingwan, but it didn't affect her. In addition, Qin Shufei probably slept well. She went to see the imperial noble consort in her sleep. Qin Shufei calmly told the imperial noble consort about this matter, and finally sighed. "Yuan, or that child, usually has a bad temper and looks at everyone with his nose up at the sky. But in reality he is a sentimental person." His younger sister said that he is much better than those people who have a Buddha's mouth and a snake's heart. The imperial noble consort naturally knew what her son was doing. Although she didn't know the essence of Li Hongyuan's actions, she only knew that he wanted to keep her. Originally, she thought that he made too much of a ruckus and was worried that he wouldn't be able to collect it. In the end, he felt that it wasn't enough and took out the 9 cauldrons. Towards this kind of son, she was really worried and proud. The two intimately spoke some words. Speaking of which, they had coexisted together for more than 10 years. There was no one more intimate than them. Especially Qin Shufei knew that the imperial noble consort originally had the opportunity to completely control her body and make her disappear. However, the imperial noble consort didn't do that and even dissuaded Jin Qinhuang. However, this peach blossom incident developed very quickly. Even without Su Guifei thinking of a way to send someone to Li Hongyuan, at this time, the 9 cauldrons falling from the sky was a joyous event. Although it was the imperial noble consort who brought this wealth, the imperial noble consort had already passed away. As the direct beneficiary other than the emperor, there should also be Jin Qinhuang. And now it could be said that Jin Qinhuang didn't lack anything. It was just that his knees were empty. Jin Qinhuang Fei has been in Jin Qinhuang Fu for almost a year. Until now there is still no good news. Shouldn't the emperor consider appointing Tu Si Fei to Jin Wang Yi? Moreover, Jin Qinhuang Fei is serving Wang Yi alone. It's really hard. Someone should share the burden with her. Moreover, when it's inconvenient for Jin Qinhuang Fei to serve, wouldn't Wang Yi be wronged? The more Lu Qingdi listened, the more he felt that it was reasonable. Originally, he was worried that an innocent girl would be cursed by his son. But now his wife had been by his side for almost a year and was still doing very well. Not to mention whether his fate had changed or not, with his wife supporting him, it shouldn't be a problem to appoint Tu Si Fei. "Are there any suitable girls in your families?" Now that several important concubines in the inner palace were useless, Lichengdi decided to personally take action and directly asked at the imperial court. The people who planned this probably didn't think that it would go so smoothly. In fact, there were many people who knew about this idea. Not only were they unable to withstand the crying of their daughters at home, but there were also great benefits to be gained here. Therefore, when Lichengdi's words came out, they eagerly stood up to promote their own daughters. As the saying goes, if there is one, there will be two. One after another, the number of people really wasn't small. It seemed that they were all afraid of falling behind. Lichengdi's hot head finally cooled down. When did his evil spawn's son become a delicious cake? In the past, when it came to choosing a concubine for his sixth son, each and every one of them avoided it. Now each and every one of them wanted to be his cheap father-in-law? The nature of this matter was completely different from some people who maliciously supported that evil spawn before. In-laws, that was a good relationship between two surnames. This was already hinting at certain things. Lichengdi's expression didn't change. This CE still had to be given, but this person had to be carefully considered. Her status couldn't be too high, but it also couldn't be too low. Everyone might as well go back and prepare a small portrait of your daughters and send it to the palace. Zhen wants, let Xu Fei take a good look and then choose two people. As Jingwan's maternal grandfather, although Luo Peishan kept silent, his face was as peaceful as ever. In fact, several real big shots were basically like this, as if this matter had nothing to do with them. Only in the end, the Grand Secretary of the Cabinet stood up. Emperor, should we inform Jin Wangya first? If it was other people, there was no need to deliberately do this. After all, they were bound to participate in the morning court. When encountering a lifelong matter, they would know. Jin Wangya was different. He could close his doors and not go out for a month. Lichengdi wanted to heroically say no need, but in the end these two words circled around the tip of his tongue and swallowed them back. If he chose someone and directly sent it over, his evil spawn might really not give him face and directly throw the person out. That would be really shameful. At that time, should he punish that evil spawn or not? If he punished, he would be distressed. If he didn't punish, where was the heaven's prestige? In that case, beloved official Luo should take some time to go to Jin Wangfu. Shouldn't this kind of thing be done by his personal chamberlain? The intention of letting Luo Peishan go was actually very obvious. This official obeys. Luo Peishan respectfully responded without the slightest discomfort. For Luo Peishan, this was really not a big deal. He just said a few words. Once he did it, he could just pat his butt and leave. His granddaughter didn't need his advice, and he didn't need to intervene in this matter. He just needed to wait and watch the show. After the court meeting, Li Hongming went to noble consort Su's place. Princess Lu was already there. Obviously, noble consort Su had already understood the matter. She cared far more about this matter than Li Hongming and Princess Lu. This was because she knew that some problems couldn't be found out. No matter how hard you tried, you couldn't give birth. Even if you could give birth in the past, it didn't mean that you could always give birth, because this problem could come back at any time. Noble consort Su looked very calm at this time. She was so calm that she blocked out everything from the outside world. Then, as if she suddenly realized that there were still people there, she said, "Go back first and wait for my news." Prince Rue and his wife looked at each other. They both found that their mother was very strange today. However, they knew very well what kind of temper noble consort Su had, so they didn't ask more. Because they wouldn't get an answer even if they asked, they could only say goodbye. After they left, noble consort Su sent everyone around her out. Then the calmness that she had maintained collapsed in an instant. Her face suddenly turned pale, and fine beads of sweat appeared on her forehead and the tip of her nose. She couldn't even sit still. She leaned over the gorgeous chair and gasped for breath. Noble consort Su clenched her teeth. It took her a long time to recover. Then noble consort Su sat up and muttered to herself, "Are you taking revenge? Because I drugged your son, you also want my son to have no children? It's been a long time. It's been so long that I've forgotten. Yes, it's been a long time. If it was really you, if you really knew, you would have done it long ago." Noble consort Su rubbed her temples. She hadn't slept well for a long time. Things had never been smooth again. Could be said that she was exhausted and sometimes even a little hysterical. It was no wonder that she had such a big reaction after knowing what might be wrong with her son. "Good sister, I can take care of you on wholeheartedly. However, it's because you've been dead for so many years and still occupy the emperor's heart. Even if Yuan is a devil, he's still a big threat. Therefore I can only avoid future troubles. Don't blame me. As the saying goes, every man for himself and the devil takes the hindmost. If it were you, you would do the same. Come in. The palace servant guarding outside the door hurriedly came in. Your Highness. Tell old Madame Sue to enter the palace. Yes, Your Highness. Old Madame Sue also acted quickly. Noble Consort Sue pulled her mother to talk for about an hour. Noble Consort Sue knew that there was one person who could confirm her son's situation, and this person was the traveling doctor who saved Li Hongyuan at White Dragon Temple 2 years ago. Therefore, when Noble Consort Sue knew that the white ape had fished out her adopted son from the river, she didn't have any doubts in her heart. Because Noble Consort Sue had personally seen this traveling doctor, and she had also personally experienced his medical skills. She had truly seen what was called bringing the dead back to life. Wasn't the young doctor in Jin Qin Wang Fu very good? But compared with that person, Noble Consort Sue really felt that Gongjie was not enough. Unfortunately, the traveling doctor owed her a small favor and gave her a token. That was more than 30 years ago and she hadn't married yet. However, the traveling doctor said that as long as he was still alive, he could help once without violating morality. The reason why he said so was that the traveling doctor didn't have a name and didn't have a fixed residence. He would go wherever he went and it was basically impossible to specially look for him. However, if there was a token and it was handed to a specific place, he would appear within 3 months. 3 months might seem a little too long, but he might have gone deep into the mountains and forests. Moreover, he wasn't from some mysterious organization and there were people who specially sent him a token. Therefore, it was already very impressive for him to appear in 3 months. For so many years, Noble Consort Sue had been keeping the token well. Originally, she planned to give it to her son after the throne was confirmed. At that time, whether the one sitting on the throne was her son or not, she thought that it might be useful. Unexpectedly, it was used at this time. The token was taken out of the palace by old Madame Sue. What she had to do now was to wait. Regarding this matter, Noble Consort Sue was not afraid of the follow-up trouble. First of all, the traveling doctor couldn't know her identity. Second, after so many years, how could such a person remember who he gave a token that was very common to him? In fact, Noble Consort Sue had thought of keeping the traveling doctor at the beginning. However, as soon as she revealed such a thought, she fainted in the blink of an eye. When she woke up, the traveling doctor had already disappeared. She couldn't even find him. This matter was temporarily like this. Noble Consort Sue then remembered that her adopted son was going to choose a concubine. She asked someone to call the 2 palace maids that she had carefully trained for her adopted son. The 2 stood respectfully in front of Noble Consort Sue. Their expressions were pleasant, generous, and decent. Not to mention their charm, even their appearance was a bit similar to Jingwan. The 2 looked like this now, but after taking off their clothes, Noble Consort Sue felt that even a woman would tremble and want to have a good time with them, let alone a man. After the training was successful, she originally wanted to find a reason to send them over. Now it seemed that it was unnecessary. After the concubine was chosen, she would directly send them to the 2 people and then bring them to Jean Prince's mansion. She would also be saved from being a bad person. Noble Consort Sue was very confident about this matter. After all, she was the one who sent them. First, she was the noble consort, so she couldn't refuse. Second, she wanted to be a good daughter-in-law. With her support to fight against Jean Prince's mansion, she naturally had to curry favor with her. https://11/11807/10751274. Chapter 466. At this time, Jingwan still didn't know that Noble Consort Sue was still sparing no effort to disgust her. Of course, Noble Consort Sue herself might not think so. In her view, it was true that she wanted to divide Li Hongyuan's favor towards Jingwan, but it was more for her son's sake. Her son was of noble birth. How could he only have one person by his side? How aggrieved would he be? And that's right, she was a good Mufei who wholeheartedly cared for her son. Even if her son was estranged from her now, she believed that he would change his mind in the future. How could there be overnight enmity between mother and son? It was just that if Noble Consort Sue found out one day, she would be very clear about all the things that she had done to her adopted son. The reason why she was harmonious with her and her son all these years was only because she had value. Sometimes when she thought about it, Jingwan really wanted to see that scene. Let's not talk about this for the time being. In any case, noble consort Su's plan was destined to fail. Let's just talk about those ministers who were ready to make a move. Even when facing a certain prince that they supported, they would only smile and play Tai Chi. Wang Ye, you're really thinking too much. Then they sighed. There's an evil creature in the family, wholeheartedly pouncing on Jin Qinhuang, wanting to die or live. What can this official do? I can't just watch her die, right? Then the expression on their faces eased. Wang Ye, in fact, this matter is also good for you. Think about it, if this official's daughter becomes Jin Qinhuang's Zifei in the future, if you have any conflicts with Jin Qinhuang, it might be able to ease a bit. The only thing missing was to say, Your Highness, this official is doing this for you. I really don't have any ill intentions. If they helped Li Hongyuan ascend to the throne, it would be a real merit for them to ascend to the heavens in one step. According to the previous situation, it was impossible to do this. Power and wealth were too tempting. This was a gamble. If they won the gamble, they would have everything they wanted. If they lost, it would not be a big deal. As the saying goes, the law cannot punish the majority. Looking at the past, the ones who failed to seize the throne were often those closest to the loser. When a new emperor ascended to the throne, he needed to show benevolence and the demeanor of an emperor. He needed to disregard the past and not stick to one pattern to use talents. And who was the closest to Jin Qinhuang? Wasn't that the Luo family? Therefore, although these people seemed to be doing something stupid and brazen, they were actually calculating in their hearts. If they won, the rewards would be high, but if they lost, the risk would not be high. Cunning. However, in the end, these people overlooked a point. A very important point, and that was Jin Qinhuang himself. Those who were secretly working for Jin Qinhuang looked at their colleagues who had a good relationship with them. They looked at them with complicated gazes and finally sighed. They patted their colleagues' shoulders and walked away. You say, why don't you live a good life and insist on seeking death? It's so easy to stuff people into Jin Qinhuang's side. Do you think it's your turn? No matter how good your calculations are, it's useless to go in the wrong direction. Others may only wear small shoes, but Jin Qinhuang will really kill you. Unfortunately, these words could not be said. Even if their hearts hurt from holding it in, they had to hold it in. Compared to the indignation of Kong Qinhuang, Gong Qinhuang and the others, Rui Qinhuang did not have much reaction. However, recently, even if Rui Qinhuang was still the gentle and polite Rui Qinhuang who was respectful to the wise, people more or less felt that something was wrong. His mental state was not good. Especially those who were old and experienced, they could clearly see the gloominess and hostility in Rui Qinhuang's eyes. This was obviously his mood was not smooth to the extreme. It looked like a big problem that could not be solved for a long time. Luo Peixiang confidently and at ease went to Jin Qinhuang Fu and drank a cup of good tea on the way. It was just a matter of one sentence. When he left, he also took Jingwan's 2 pots of flowers. He clearly looked like a pure and elegant old man, but he actually did some hooligan things. He could have just opened his mouth and taken it away. Why did he have to use the word snatch? Jingwan was helpless, but her eyes showed indulgence as if she was looking at a naughty child. Old child, it really was not fake. Although in the officialdom he was still skillful and decisive in his actions. Wan, what do you want to say? Li Hongyuan stood beside Jingwan, his tone indifferent. And, Yuan is talking about the matter of the Sufei? Jingwan chuckled. Isn't that something to be expected? It's just that I didn't expect it to be so fast. I originally thought that I would have to wait for at least 2 days. I didn't expect these people to be so impatient. However, doesn't this just show that those people are actually very optimistic about Wang Ye? She teased. Their eyesight is not bad, but they are a bit slow. They intend to send charcoal in snowy weather, but they can't even add flowers to brocade. Our Jin Qinhuang dislikes it. Li Hongyuan's finger rubbed Jingwan's face. So, how does Wan plan to deal with it? If the emperor didn't intervene, it doesn't matter if I deal with it. But the emperor has spoken, I can't do anything. So Wang Ye, this time it's better for you to deal with it personally. Actually, I think that a truly good husband not only has to deal with his own love rival, but also his wife's love rival, understand? Jingwan smiled. Jingwan's words in Li Hongyuan's ears may be a bit nondescript, but it didn't prevent him from understanding the meaning. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Jingwan. His gaze was fixed and no emotions could be seen. Jingwan felt goosebumps all over her body from being stared at by him, just like a frog being stared at by a snake. She couldn't stop herself from taking a step back. Li Hongyuan seemed to know and naturally reached out with his hand. With a little force he pulled Jingwan back. My love rival? Jingwan wanted to curse. What was that? Wasn't she focusing on the wrong thing? Lara, why do you always have to hold on to this point and not let it go? Jingwan suddenly got angry. Obviously I have more love rivals, okay? And they are the kind who can confidently throw themselves at you. If you want, I can only look at them with a smile. I can't have any opinions, let alone say anything. My affairs are so old that they have passed 800 years ago. Why do you still have to hold on to it? Didn't I say it before? Wanwan can crush and destroy my rotten peach blossoms at will. You can even kill them all. I don't have any objections. However, Wanwan has always stopped me from doing anything to some people. Li Hongyuan was not guilty at all. He was very self-righteous. Jingwan was instantly rendered speechless by him. That was a human life. How could she treat it as a real peach blossom and cut it all off? Li Hongyuan gently rubbed the back of Jingwan's neck. However, Wanwan is right. Of course I want to be a good husband. So I will deal with this matter. I will never let Wanwan worry. Jingwan heard him say this and felt even worse. What was that? Asking him to deal with it? Was he really going to destroy the flowers? Could he not be so cruel? Those flowers were actually very delicate and couldn't withstand a round of torture from the King of Hell. If they died, it would be too much. After all, those people just wanted to be pampered and loved. They didn't have to worry about food and clothing. They were also a little vain. In fact, it wasn't a crime no matter where they were. In fact, there were many such people everywhere. Naturally, they didn't deserve to die. Of course, if those people really dared to pounce on her, she would definitely not be polite. There were many ways to get rid of them. But now, just thinking about it, you want to kill them? Well, you can be a little gentler. Li Hongyuan sneered. Sure enough, they are women. Those are people who covet your husband. Jingwan pursed her lips. With that kind of previous life, unless one was a homicidal maniac, no one could easily disregard life. In Li Hongyuan's previous life, although he had seen Jingwan's decisiveness when she killed people, there was no fear or hesitation in her eyes. Because that was a real enemy. An enemy who invaded her own country, killed her own people and destroyed the happiness and peace of countless people. In the end, Li Hongyuan didn't really want Jingwan to become that kind of ruthless person. In fact, he had never thought that Jingwan was bad. Now that he saw her like this, he felt a little sorry for her. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her forehead. Don't worry, I won't kill them. At most I will. Jingwan's expression naturally eased when she heard this. She rubbed her face against his chest. But after rubbing her face twice, her face became a little stiff and the corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. It was all because of Li Hongyuan's next words. If you cripple, disfigure and die, then there is only one way. If you don't die, there are many ways. Li Hongyuan played it down as if he wanted to give Jingwan a science lesson of 1,000 ways that wouldn't kill, but could make people suffer so much that they wished they were dead. Jingwan felt a little hopeless. Her husband was not only a master at destroying others, but also a master at destroying himself. Clearly he was still a stalwart figure a moment ago, but in a second he could become the Dark Devil King, the kind that couldn't be darker. Sure enough, she should be like those people outside and firmly believe that the King of Hell would always be the King of Hell. This is your gentler. Jingwan didn't give up. She felt that perhaps there was still a way to salvage the situation. Li Hongyuan gently raised his eyebrows and lowered his head to meet Jingwan's gaze. Otherwise, actually, you can be a little gentler and let them know the difficulties and retreat. Don't you think so? Troublesome. If Wanwan is not satisfied, then you can do it yourself. I can do it myself. Do I still need you? Jingwan felt a little irritable. Li Hongyuan's eyes suddenly became meaningful. If you can do it yourself, then you can do it yourself? Jingwan smiled. Prince, this concubine feels that there is no problem with my words. If you have any doubts, then there must be something wrong with your ears. Tell me, what is the problem? Li Hongyuan nodded. Then Wanwan, remember what you said. In the future, when you can do it yourself, don't look for your husband. You know, if we continue with our plan, there will only be more people who want your husband in the future. Jingwan felt a little uncomfortable. She seemed to have dug a deep hole for herself, the kind that was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. Think about it, if an emperor only had one empress in his harem, how would the officials react? Now, there were people who wanted to give her husband concubines. When that time came, it was likely that the entire court would want to give her concubines. If she really had to deal with it all, then she would not only have to face all kinds of women who brought their daughters to see him all day long, but also the court officials. Not to mention facing such a scene just now, Jingwon really had nothing left to live for. You can't do this. Jingwon leaned weakly on him as if her bones had been pulled out. Ha! Lee Hongyuan only chuckled. There was no need to say the mockery in his words. How can you bear to do this? And your husband is very willing. Lee Hongyuan replied faintly and patted Jingwon's back. Your husband is very optimistic about you. Jingwon looked at Lee Hongyuan with resentment, hoping that he would change his mind. However, a certain someone's heart was stone. The words, "Do you not love me anymore?" spun on the tip of Jingwon's tongue. Fortunately, her intelligence returned to normal at the last moment. She was sure that once these words came out of her mouth, a certain someone would definitely immediately act up and then personally tell her how much he loved her, how long he wanted to love her, and how long he wanted to stay in bed for as long as she wanted. Jingwon truly felt that it was not easy for her to be able to grasp the temperament of a living king of hell whose moods were constantly changing. Moreover, the next day Qin Shufei received many portraits of young ladies. It was more than what she had expected. Although there were less than 10 people who recommended themselves in court, after all, in the capital, only officials of 4th rank and above could attend court. However, after some people's manipulation, the number of people who knew that Jin Qinhuang was good was not just this number. Zifei, after all, did not have as high a requirement as the Jingfei. Now that Jin Qinhuang's situation was good, as long as they were not blind, they could basically see it. Naturally, they would be eager to make a move. Not to mention becoming a Zifei, being able to be fancied as a concubine was also not bad. Therefore, the portraits in front of Qin Shufei slowly filled up the table. It was obvious that these young ladies in the portraits could not all be those who had fancied Jin Qinhuang. There were bound to be some who were used by their family elders to climb up the social ladder. If there was no one they fancied, it was still fine. At most, they would be endlessly worried about the future. It was also possible that they resented their elders for wanting to marry them off as concubines. If there was someone they fancied, perhaps they would have already cried until their liver and intestines were cut to pieces. Jin Qinhuang had made it clear to the Imperial Gui Fei that he would allow Jingwon to be a couple for the rest of her life. The Imperial Gui Fei naturally did not hide it from Qin Shufei. Therefore, when Qin Shufei looked at these portraits, there was some rumination in her eyes and also some helplessness. Therefore, how should this matter be handled? She could casually pick two, but she was certain that those two young ladies would not have a good ending. Wasn't that equivalent to indirectly harming others? If they originally harbored some thoughts, then it was not a big deal. If they were the kind who simply wanted to marry a husband of equal status and live a peaceful and happy life, then wouldn't that be a big sin? How did such a difficult problem fall on her? If she could see Imperial Gui Fei Jieji right now, it would be good, but Nyang Gui Fei Nyang is here. Qin Shufei's eyes flashed slightly. This was not unexpected. Please come in. Gui Fei Su had specially dressed up today and looked quite spirited. It was just that she had lost a lot of weight. Wearing Gui Fei's outfit, it was obvious that she could not compare to her previous style. Qinxia greets Gui Fei Nyang. Qin Shufei respectfully bowed. Logically speaking, Gui de Shu Xian and the other 4 concubines should be on equal footing. However, Gui Fei was the head and was still a little higher. Furthermore, Gui Fei Su's status was older than Qin Shufei and she also had a son. Qin Shufei bowed to her in order to not give anyone a chance to make a mistake. Qin Shufei did not show it from the start, but she did things in all aspects without any loopholes. In this aspect, Gui Fei Su admitted that she was inferior. After all, she was once favored and her son had a promising future. Naturally, she was proud. No matter how restrained she was, there were still some places that were a little ostentatious. If one did not pay attention, small problems would occur. This would not happen with Qin Shufei. Gui Fei Su looked at her for a moment and suddenly smiled. She hurriedly reached out to help Qin Shufei up and then naturally held her arm. There's no need to be so polite between us sisters. Qin Shufei smiled gently. Etiquette cannot be ignored. Gui Fei Su seemed a little helpless. Younger sister, you know the purpose of this consort's visit, right? Qin Shufei nodded and brought her to the previous table. The ones that were sent in today are all here. Imperial concubine Su was also surprised by such a large number. She narrowed her eyes slightly. The precautions she had taken many years ago were indeed correct. At this juncture, seeing that he had the advantage, these officials immediately wanted to chase after him. If she didn't take precautions, her son might really end up with nothing in the end. She could treat her adopted son wholeheartedly, but there was a prerequisite, and that was that he could not compete with her biological son for the throne. However, Gui Feisu did not think about it. With this so-called prerequisite, could it still be called wholeheartedly? Gui Feisu casually picked up the scroll at the top and opened it. She carefully looked at it. She had a general idea of which family this girl was from. Afterwards, she looked at the scrolls one by one. The smile at the corner of her mouth did not change. As for the scrolls that she looked at, she divided them into two piles. One pile had more scrolls and the other had fewer scrolls. Qin Shufei sat at the side and slowly drank tea. She looked on without batting an eyelid. She had no intention of going forward. It was not until Gui Feisu finished looking at the last scroll that she seemed to realize that she had overstepped her boundaries. She looked a little embarrassed. "Younger sister, I'm really sorry. Because it's Yuan'er's matter, Ben Gong could not help but, Gui Fei Nyang does not need to be like this. This is human nature." Qin Shufei said. "That's right. Even if Yuan'er has some misunderstandings about me now as a mother, I can't really ignore him." Qin Shufei inexplicably felt a little tired. "Just as well. I didn't know how to choose before. If Gui Fei Nyang could give me some suggestions, it would naturally be best. After all, you are Jin Qinhuang's Mufei. No one knows better than you what kind of woman he likes. After all, we have to serve Jin Qinhuang." Younger sister's words are reasonable. Gui Feisu sat down at the side. "Ben Gong has an impression of some of these girls, but I can't match most of them. It would be better if I could summon them into the palace for a meeting. After all, these portraits are somewhat distorted. Moreover, the girl's conduct is like this. It would be better to meet them in person to know. I also have this intention. Why don't we pass down the message now and have these girls enter the palace in 3 days? What does Gui Fei Nyang think?" Qin Shufei said very considerately. "Of course it's good. However, summoning only these girls is too deliberate. Why don't we summon all the girls of marriageable age?" Qin Shufei thought. Was this disdain that Jin Qinhuang's attention was not high enough? That she did not draw enough hatred? "Then we will follow Gui Fei Nyang's wishes. Someone come." Qin Shufei told the person who said the words. It was impossible for her to take the blame for nothing. Gui Feisu was slightly annoyed, but as a Mufei who cared about her son, she could not deny it. However, there were two sides to this matter. Either the emperor reprimanded her for stretching her hand too far, or he would be grateful that she cared about her son and did not hesitate to go against his words and soften his attitude. If it was the former, compared to now, it would probably not be worse. If it was the latter, it would naturally be better. Thus, Gui Feisu smiled and thanked Qin Shufei. Afterwards, Gui Feisu sat for a while and then excused herself with the excuse that she was tired. Qin Shufei sent her back and her gaze fell on the scrolls. She casually took out a scroll from the smaller pile and opened it to take a look. After just a glance, she changed 2 more scrolls. Qin Shufei understood in her heart that the candidates that Su Shi liked had high status and good looks. Although the portraits were distorted, the person who drew them did not dare to be too outrageous. After all, if the difference was too big, it could be seen through at a glance. That would be deceiving the monarch. And the people who chose were not restricted to which faction they belonged to. After all, the so-called factions, other than a few people, the others could not be clearly distinguished and their temperament was still open for discussion. At least on the surface, it seemed that Gui Feisu truly wanted to choose 2 good Sufei for her adopted son. Regardless of whether it was true or false or if there was a deeper meaning, in any case, it would only be a waste of effort and it would not succeed. As such, Qin Shufei also let go and just went through the motions. It was just that, on the day these young ladies entered the palace, Qin Shufei saw Jingwan. At first she was surprised, but then she felt that it was normal. Gui Feisu did such a thing and could not be blamed. After all, choosing a Su Fei for Jin Qinhuang, letting Jin Qinhuang Fei take a look and listen to her opinion, such a good mother-in-law was rare. However, only a few people knew that Gui Feisu was only trying to discuss Jingwan. "I gave you people, you refused. I asked you to raise your own maidservant, you refused. Then now the emperor has personally spoken, can you still refuse? Everyone should have a taste of choosing people for their own husband." Of course, there were many people who came to watch the excitement. It could be said that all the imperial concubines in the inner palace, except for the empress, had gathered. Even Wei Xianfei, who was confirmed to be pregnant with the dragon seed, was surrounded by people and came in a grandiose manner. Seeing that Wei Xianfei was surrounded so tightly that not even a drop of water could trickle through, many imperial concubines gritted their teeth and tore their handkerchiefs. This woman was obviously a princess of an enemy country and was disliked by the emperor. In this case she was actually pregnant, and those who used all their means but still ended up with nothing, couldn't wait to eat her alive. Thus, the concubine selection had not yet begun, and here there was a palace drama. However, Wei Xianfei was too well protected. No matter how others provoked her, she ignored them. She was very calm and did not give others a chance to get close to her. Therefore, those concubines with ulterior motives were helpless in the end. They could only stare at Wei Xianfei's belly, which was not yet obvious. They wished they could stare at it until it disappeared. Compared to them, whether it was Gui Fei Su or Qin Shufei, they were very calm. There was even a sincere joy on their faces, as if they were really looking forward to the birth of this child. Qin Shufei was not interested in how others were doing. He did not care at all. Whether she was pregnant or not, whether she was able to give birth or not, she did not need to worry about it. The people around Wei Xianfei would prepare everything properly and let Wei Xianfei sit peacefully. Because this matter was handed over to Qin Shufei, Gui Fei Su did not make her presence known. At this time she was playing the role of a good mother-in-law. She called Jingwan to her side and talked to her with a kind face. She sincerely taught Jingwan how to get along with the concubines in the future. It was nothing more than not putting them in her eyes. No matter how much her husband liked them, they were just playthings and could not surpass her. Jingwan was definitely going to have goosebumps. However, since Gui Fei Su wanted to show motherly kindness, Jingwan could also show filial piety. Imperial mother had to take care of her body. She was not young to begin with. If she did not pay attention, Imperial father might feel that it hurt his eyes when he saw her in the future. Moreover, those servants flattered the strong and stepped on the weak. If Imperial mother's spirit was not good, Minxiang might be bullied and so on. In short, if you disgust me, I will choose to step on your sore spot. No matter how much you disgust me, in the end things will not work out. I will step on your sore spot. Who's afraid of who? Gui Fei Su smiled, but the gaze she looked at Jingwan with was as if it was dipped in poison. Jingwan also smiled, but her eyes were cold and gloomy. In the eyes of others, this mother-in-law and daughter-in-law pair was happy and harmonious, as if they were biological mother and daughter. Qin Shufei did not deliberately arrange anything. She just let these girls do whatever they wanted. If they were willing, they could perform for everyone to see. If they had such thoughts, they would naturally compete to show it at this time. In fact, the general situation could be seen from their dressing. Regardless of whether it was voluntary or not, those who were willing would dress up beautifully. They wanted to be in the limelight and attract attention. Those who were not willing would try their best to conceal themselves. They would not stand out if they did not compete. Qin Shufei occasionally called one or two people to come forward and talk. She did not have any preferences and just casually picked. Occasionally she would turn back to ask Gui Fei Su and Jingwan for their opinions. Gui Fei Su was busy coming up with ideas, looking as if she was especially anxious for Jingwan. Jingwan sat quietly with a tranquil smile. Imperial mother and imperial concubine Shu can make the decision. Daughter-in-law believes in your taste and will definitely pick the best. In Imperial Consort Su's opinion, Jingwan was also used to pretending. At this moment even she couldn't tell if she was really forcing a smile or not. However, Imperial Consort Su thought that with Madame Luo's jealous nature, she would definitely be unhappy at this moment. If she was unhappy, Imperial Consort Su would be happy. If Jingwan knew what she was thinking, she would probably give her 3 words. You're thinking too much. In this way it was lively for most of the day. Other than some harmless small framing between these girls, nothing else happened. Towards the end, many concubines felt bored and returned to their own palaces one after another. Qin Shufei made the decision to leave a meal in the palace. Then Qin Shufei, Gui Fei Su and Jingwan exchanged opinions. It seemed that they already had a plan in mind. Jingwan still did not have any objections. Gui Fei Su even said in a seemingly angry and resentful tone, "You child." Those unfinished words were really full of twists and turns. She looked at Qin Shufei with eyes full of helplessness. In the end she said, Since that's the case, you can leave the palace and return to your residence. This concubine will discuss the final choice with Gui Fei Su. Was this not giving her a chance to speak with Gui Fei Su alone? Jingwan smiled. Then this daughter-in-law will take her leave. Did she think that Jingwan could not interact with Gui Fei Su in private just because she could not? It could only be said that Gui Fei Su was naive. In fact, Li Hongyuan had already ordered people to investigate clearly who was interested in these girls. The characters of these girls were also stripped clean. However, Li Hongyuan did not even look at them. He directly indicated that he would choose those who looked good on the surface but were dirty on the inside. In this way he did not have to hesitate at all. Wanwan knew about this. Based on her character of abhorrence of evil, there was no need to worry that she would not be able to bear it. Then Qin Shufei had already received accurate information about which two people were to be chosen. Thus, she did not have any psychological burden and exchanged opinions with Gui Fei Su. Thus, Gui Fei Su, who was kept in the dark, felt that it was not bad. The most important thing was that one of the girls was from the Su family. That year when Gui Fei Su chose Li Hongyuan as his Zhengfei, the first one was a girl from the Su family. In the end it was that kind of ending. She naturally felt regretful. Although she sent in a Si Fei with her help behind the scenes, it was not impossible for her to take the position of Zhengfei in the future. In fact, Gui Fei Su did not have any opinions about who would take the position of Zhengfei. However, because Jingwan disobeyed her, she did not like Jingwan very much. Thus, she was very keen to chase Jingwan away. Therefore, from the beginning, Li Hongyuan did not plan to find Lu Qingdi. He was very clear about Lu Qingdi's moral character. Once he had made up his mind, it was very difficult to change. Thus, Li Hongyuan was too lazy to talk nonsense with him and rejected this time. As long as those officials did not give up, there would be a second time, a third time. It was better to get it done once and for all. After the candidates were confirmed, the imperial decree was sent down the next day. The high officials and nobles in the capital basically knew about it at the first moment. Those who had the intention but were not chosen naturally had a fierce temper. And those who did not have any thoughts let out a big sigh of relief. However, those who were concerned about Jingwan naturally wrote letters to inquire. They did not dare to say it clearly, afraid that she would be sad. Jingwan only replied with 2 words, "Don't worry." They did not understand the specific meaning, but it was not good to continue to ask. Because it was a Si Fei, there was not so much attention. The time to carry the person into Jin Wangfu was half a month later. Jin Qin Wangfu didn't send out any news, so everyone could only wait quietly. After that, imperial concubine Su secretly sent the 2 prepared young ladies over. At this time, everyone was well aware of the meaning of imperial concubine Su sending people over. Therefore, even if they were sullen, they could only endure it. Time flew by and 10 days passed. Then thunder exploded in the capital. One of the Si Fei designated for Jin Wangfu went to Bai Long Temple to burn incense and return a vow. Somewhere along the way the ground suddenly collapsed and a hole appeared. The horse sprained its foot and overturned the carriage. The young lady was thrown out of the carriage and her head happened to hit a stone. She fainted on the spot. When she was sent back to the Fu and woke up, she was stunned. It should be known that there were 2 servant girls in the carriage and the coachman in front. Several people were also thrown out. At most, their skin was broken. Other than that, nothing happened. In such a situation, no one would think that it was a coincidence because it was too much of a coincidence. How many people began to mutter in their hearts? Could it be that this Jin Wangfu not only jinxed his wife, but also his concubines? And the most frightened was still that young lady's family. Because the palace maid that imperial concubine Su sent over was obviously prepared for Jin Wangfu, guarding the stove for that young lady. The pot of medicine on the stove inexplicably exploded and then her face was injured. At this point, how could they still dare to think of sending their family's young lady to Jin Wangfu? The remaining Su family's young lady immediately became a bird startled by the twang of a bow. Trembling with fear, she was even careful when eating and drinking. The palace maid beside her was also deeply affected. No matter what kind of beautiful future imperial concubine Su promised, her small life was threatened. How could she think of anything else? Even so, that palace maid stepped on a pearl that had been dropped earlier. Just like that, she fiercely fell. Her face was not injured, nor was her arms or legs injured. However, her ear was inexplicably injured. That Su family's young lady almost went crazy. The next day she was going to Jin Wangfu. At this time she was shouting that she was not going to marry. Similarly, she wanted to break through the heavens in terms of riches and honor. However, it was already at this juncture, how could she not marry? And when imperial concubine Su found out about this situation, her face was especially ugly. However, she had no other choice because these incidents did not seem to be man-made. And on the day of the official marriage, Jin Wangfu prepared a banquet as usual. However, all the invited guests did not dare to enter the door and were still observing. If this Su sure could smoothly enter the door, then they would go. If she could not, then they would just treat it as if they did not know about this matter. Although she was not the main concubine and did not need to be welcomed by Li Hongyuan, and the standard was far inferior, but in the end she was still a secondary concubine. A certain scene was still necessary. Young lady Su cried to the heavens and scrambled the earth, unwilling to get on the sedan. There was no other way. Su family could only give her a little medicine. However, fearing that something would happen, the dosage was very light and only let her sleep a little. Halfway through, young lady Su woke up and made a ruckus in the bridal sedan for a while. The people outside saw the commotion and felt that the situation was not bad. At least she was spirited. Perhaps because she had accepted her fate, it was quiet after that. When they carried her to the side door of Jin Wangfu, eunuch Mu, who was the chief steward, was waiting. However, when the matron of honor entered the sedan and prepared to help her down, she turned her head and rolled out. Her face was pale with fright and she trembled as she pointed inside the sedan. "What's wrong? This person is dead?" Mu An's face was unhappy. He lifted the sedan by himself and took a few glances before retreating. "She really died. What bad luck." There was no surprise on his face, as if this was completely expected. "Someone go and call the Fu doctor over to see how she died." Compared to eunuch Mu, the other people who came to send the bride were not so calm. One by one they retreated far away. Eunuch Mu indifferently swept a glance. "It's not like you are marrying our Wangye. Can Wangye jinx you? Our family has been following Wangye since childhood and has always been very good." These words were simply the truth. The person in the sedan was really jinxed by Jin Wangye. She was even more miserable than the other girl and directly lost her life. This time it was not Gong Jiu who came but the Fu doctor of Jin Wangfu. He went in to check and quickly retreated. "Eunuch Mu, this girl was scared to death. Tisk, so it can't be blamed on our Wangye. However, she also doesn't have good fortune to be so timid. Alright, send him back to where he came from." "A dead person, do you still want to enter Jin Wangfu?" Mu Gonggong swung his hand and led the people of the Wangfu into the door. With a bang, the door was closed. The people who came to send the bride looked at each other in dismay. In the end, they could only send her back to Su family while trembling with fear. They absolutely did not dare to behave atrociously in Jin Wangfu. When eunuch Mu said that it had nothing to do with Jin Wangfu, they did not believe it at all. Because there were many people who paid attention to it, the news that Su family's girl died and was sent back to Su family immediately spread out. "Alright, go do what you need to do." There was no need to go to Jin Wangfu. In fact, there was a bit of a feeling in their hearts. When the news spread to the palace, the cup in noble consort Su's hand slipped and shattered. Liqingdi was also in a daze. Finally, he lamented and threw this matter to one side. He did not care about it at all. He did not have the slightest bit of guilt that an innocent person would end up like this because of his words. In Jin Wangfu, Li Hongyuan hugged Jingwan and laughed. The more he laughed, the happier he became. He even buried his face in Jingwan's neck. His shoulders were trembling, looking particularly neurotic. https:///11/11807/108909778. Chapter 467. Jingwan pretended to be a wooden stake, allowing a certain lunatic to vent his emotions in such a strange way. Fortunately, the living Hades had always been good at controlling his emotions, so his neurotic appearance did not last long. Then he cupped Jingwan's face and gently stroked her sideburns. Then he said, "Wanwan, look at this expression. Are you despising your husband? In order to deal with Wanwan's love rival, your husband has to consider Wanwan's kindness and show mercy. Do you know how hard it is? Now Wanwan actually despises your husband. Do you know how sad your husband is? So, was he still suffering from an illness? All you did was move your lips and give me instructions. How was it hard?" To be honest, Jingwan was really used to it. Otherwise, if she suddenly saw him like this, she might really be scared and run as far away as possible. It was unlikely that they would be able to read each other's minds. From this point of view, perhaps the living Hades was aware of his illness and had actually restrained himself before marriage? Jingwon held his hand. Be good. Don't let your imagination run wild. I can despise anyone but you. This was obviously a perfunctory way of coaxing a child. It was not that she was not serious, but it really happened once in a while. Jingwon also felt quite tired. If it were not for the fact that a certain someone would only get worse if she ignored him, Jingwon really wanted to let him go and play by himself. What's that saying again? If you get it too easily, you won't cherish it. Won is definitely a classic example of this. Had he become a resentful husband? Jingwon could not help but tremble. Yuan, don't be like this. It's ruining your image. Although your image has been a little unstable for a long time, at least don't completely disillusion me. Oh, in Wan's heart, what is your husband's image? Lee Hongyuan was unmoved and asked calmly. Jingwon glanced at him and thought for a moment. Then she thought of a phrase she had seen on the internet in her previous life. Shouldn't it be crazy, domineering, cool and arrogant? It seems quite appropriate. Jingwon nodded. Although this term was actually quite childish when combined with a certain someone's status and Chi-Yuan temperament, degree of favor, way of doing things and excellent conditions, the more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was tailor-made. Although he didn't understand every word, Lee Hongyuan could still guess the general meaning. He didn't consider whether it was praise or criticism. So, your husband is entertaining my wife with colorful clothes by ruining my image. It's fine if Wan doesn't give me a reward, but she doesn't appreciate it? Shouldn't her husband be sad? Or perhaps Wan actually liked that domineering, cool and arrogant type? Then explain it to your husband and your husband will do as you wish. Imagining a certain someone acting all domineering and cool towards her, she shuddered violently. Fuck, that's too terrifying. No, it's actually quite good like this. Really, it's okay to ruin your image occasionally. It's just what I see, so it's not a problem at all. Really. This time Jingwon was as sincere as she could be. Lee Hongyuan was amused by her small appearance, and the dangerous feeling of nervousness disappeared from his body. Alright, I won't tease you anymore. This matter has been resolved. Get ready, we're going to the farmstead to stay. Jingwon nodded. This time we'll stay a little longer. If foster mother's birthday is over, we'll come back after your birthday. If her birthday isn't over, we'll stay here until we don't feel like staying or until we're summoned for something. As you wish. For Lee Hongyuan, it didn't matter where he was. He could handle things anywhere. In the past, when Jingwon wasn't around, he didn't really want to move. Now Wan liked those days of freedom, so he was naturally happy to stay by her side. After all, if the current plan didn't change, then Wan might be detained in the palace in the future, and it was hard to say what would happen in the future. Therefore, as long as there was time and opportunity, he would do his best to satisfy her. What's the matter? Is there anything else? Lee Hongyuan saw that Jingwon seemed to want to say something but hesitated, so he asked. There's a bit of a question. How did Su Shi die in the end? Because Lee Hongyuan had already given Jingwon a heads up, Jingwon knew that those two quasi-Zifei of Jin Qinhuang were not good people. Their hands were stained with more than one life. Although they were servants under her, the servants had never made any mistakes. One merely took out her anger on people because she was in a bad mood and killed people. The daughter of Su Jia even beat people to death for fun. It should be known that even if the king of Helg disregarded human life as grass, he wouldn't do it for no reason. Therefore, even if people died at this time, Jingwon's heart didn't have any fluctuations. She was only curious about the cause of death. Didn't the doctor say that she was scared to death? Could it be that Wan thought that I was the one who ordered people to kill her? I said before that I wouldn't kill anyone. This husband naturally did what I said. Because she was afraid of being cursed by you, she was in extreme fear. The closer she got to Jin Qinhuang Fu, the more afraid she became. In the end, she simply scared herself to death? If it was really such a strange way of dying, Jingwon also didn't know what to say. Otherwise, regarding this point, Lee Hongyuan felt that it was very strange. There was actually someone with such a weak ability to bear. Originally, I didn't want to take her life. I can only say that her life should end. What would happen if she didn't die? She had safely and peacefully arrived at the entrance of Jin Qinhuang Fu. Safely and peacefully? There was a problem with the drug that Su Jia gave her. Therefore, because she died, there was no movement and she arrived at the entrance of Jin Qinhuang Fu. If she didn't die, something should have happened on the street. What about the other people? How could it be a coincidence to that extent? Really curious. Jingwan nodded. It's very simple. The so-called accident was just to make the following matter reasonable so that no one would suspect. She understood. Just like the other prospective Sufei, when she fell down from the carriage she actually just knocked her head once and muddled through. It wasn't anything serious, but later on someone aggravated her injury and she became stupid. Everyone just thought that she became stupid from knocking her head. The two palace maids that noble consort Su specially trained were similar in nature. Or I don't think so much. It's all over. Li Hongyuan lazily leaned to the side and closed his eyes. He lifted his leg and placed it on Jingwan's leg. Wan, massage this husband's leg. Jingwan clicked her tongue and slapped his thigh. It was so hard. If she massaged it a few more times, it would definitely be her hands that were sore. However, Jingwan didn't have the slightest intention of refusing. A certain someone didn't really want her to massage his leg. Jingwan massaged every now and then. However, a certain someone didn't feel anything on his leg, but other parts of his body felt something. Jingwan didn't notice it at first, but at some point she lifted her hand and tidied his clothes. She suddenly turned her head and saw that the person who originally had his eyes closed was now looking at her with a burning gaze. His eyes seemed to be emitting a green light. You beast. Jingwan pushed him away and wanted to run away. A certain beast exerted strength on his waist and got up easily. He stretched out his arm and hugged Jingwan tightly. He moved closer to Jingwan's ear and chuckled flirtatiously. He deliberately lowered his voice. This husband was supposed to consummate his marriage tonight, but it was all because of Wan. Wan, don't you think that you should compensate this husband? He kissed her ear again and got up at the same time. Moreover, you still want to run away after starting the fire. That's an even bigger crime. You were the one who, you obviously wanted it too, but you refused to admit it. Indeed, your body is much more honest. He pinched her chin and turned her to face him. Then he kissed her unceremoniously. Jingwan was naturally no match for him. Her body soon softened and even her body turned to the side. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders and stroked his shoulders, back and neck. Although his interest was a little sudden, Li Hongyuan didn't have the slightest intention of restraining himself. He directly carried Jingwan up. They didn't make much of a commotion, so the servant girls outside didn't hear it. However, a certain servant girl was about to go in to change the tea. First she lightly knocked. When she didn't get a response, she thought of a possibility. After hesitating for a moment, she lifted the curtain. There was no one on the couch. The curtain on the other side of the bed was put down, but it was still swaying slightly. There was no need to say anything. Even though she was already used to it, she still couldn't help blushing. She quickly retreated and coughed lightly. Then she gestured to the others to quickly leave. Everyone was smart. Even though there was no commotion now, it wouldn't be long before everyone's faces and ears turned red. Wang Yi wasn't a kind person outside, and he wasn't a kind person when facing Wang Fei inside. As for now, it was broad daylight, hee. As for today, Wang Yi was taking in a secondary Fei, hee. It wouldn't be finished in a short while, so they wouldn't need to wait on them. Besides, even if it was finished, it would basically be the two mamas' business. As the saying goes, stealing half a day of leisure. The days that they could steal, to be honest, were definitely more than the people outside. Gong Mama was originally handling matters outside. After all, there was a banquet today, so the guests wouldn't come. The things that should be packed still needed to be packed properly. When she saw the servant girls come out, she instantly understood. The harmony inside Jin Qinhuang Fu couldn't be any more harmonious. But it wasn't the same outside. Some families were happy and some were worried. Other than those who went to the yamen to handle matters, the rest of the people of the Luo family were basically gathered at the main courtyard where old Madame Luo was. From the start, they didn't plan to go to Jin Qinhuang Fu to drink the wedding wine. At this moment, although the expression on their faces wasn't too obvious, everyone's mood was pretty good. No matter what the reason was, Jin Qinhuang not having a secondary Fei was a great thing. They didn't need to worry that their family's great-aunt would be wronged, and they didn't need to be forced to bow to the throne of Jin Qinhuang's line's #1 hardcore supporter, who knew how much trouble it would save. Compared to other people's restrained emotions, Sunny Jia's good mood was clearly more exuberant. In my opinion, this is simply old heaven wanting Jin Qinhuang to favor Wan Mimi alone. Luo Jinghua obeyed and glanced at his wife. Don't talk nonsense. Sun Yijiao lightly snorted. What are you afraid of? We're all on the same side. Who would talk nonsense outside? Luo Jinghua could only feel helpless towards her. His wife had climbed above his head from the start, and he had long been unable to listen to the husband's orders. Usually everything was fine, but when it came to his younger sister's matters, she would definitely fight with him to the end. Therefore, since he knew what the result would be, then this war of words might as well be nipped at the source. Whatever she said, it was fine as long as she was happy. It's just that his wife cared so much about his younger sister, he felt that she had surpassed him, this husband, making him feel a little stifled. Alright, let's end this here. There's nothing more to say. You all can go back and do what you need to do. Old Madame Luo timely spoke and waved her hand, letting them all leave. Old Madame Luo's heart was like a mirror. It wasn't that old heaven wanted her family's Wan to be favored alone, but that Jin Qinhuang wanted to be favored alone. This was something that even old heaven couldn't decide. And she hoped that it would continue to be maintained. Everyone also knew old Madame Luo's temperament and got up to leave. Jingming's daughter-in-law, Luo Jingming's daughter-in-law, the daughter of the Honglu temple official, Zhaoshi hurriedly turned around. Zumo, I see that your spirit isn't very good. Call the Fu doctor to take your pulse. Your body is your own, don't treat it lightly. When the time comes, the one who will suffer will be you. Yes, many thanks, Zumo. Zhaoshi hurriedly responded. Alright, you can go. Yes, granddaughter-in-law will retire. Zhaoshi squatted. Zhaoshi could now be said to have the highest status among the three sisters-in-law. Although Sun Yijiao was born in Dinggua Gongfu, she had already been adopted by old Madame Sunday. The branch that she was in now only consisted of her and Sun Yilin. Although Sun Yilin was deeply favored by the emperor, he was still far inferior to the Honglu temple official. Thus, Sun Yijiao naturally couldn't compare to her. However, Zhaoshi didn't put on airs because of this. Instead, she did her duty well and got along well with the rest of the family. Although her husband was the most inconspicuous of the three brothers and was the son of a concubine, she wasn't dissatisfied with this marriage. The second branch was now supported by her husband. Her mother-in-law actually didn't care much about the family matters, and her husband was ambitious and was valued by her grandfather. If this continued, his future wouldn't be bad. Moreover, her husband was the same as her third uncle and didn't have any concubines by his side. Perhaps it was because her husband's temperament was more introverted. Although they weren't as inseparable as her third sister-in-law, they were still in harmony with each other. This was already much better than she had expected. Now, the only thing that she wasn't satisfied with was that after being married for a few months, there was still no sign of pregnancy in her belly. Although there were no elders urging her and her husband didn't mention it, she was still a little envious when she thought about how her third sister-in-law seemed to be almost pregnant after marrying into the family. Her mental state wasn't very good these few days, perhaps. She gently stroked her belly and a glimmer of hope flashed in her eyes. As soon as they returned to their own courtyard, Luo Jingming reached out to hold her hand. It's my fault for not noticing that you're not feeling well. However, remember to tell me in the future. After all, I'm going to get busier and I might have neglected something. We're husband and wife and we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. Don't make yourself suffer and don't be so restrained. We're at home and you should be comfortable. You should be at ease. I've made my husband worry. It's my fault. Luo Jingming was a little helpless. I just said that I haven't even turned around and you're being so polite again. When you're free, go to my third sister-in-law's place and learn from her. Life is bitter and short, live more freely. Zhaoshi opened her mouth and swallowed the words that were at the tip of her tongue. She hesitated for a moment and said, I'll listen to you. Only then did Luo Jingming smile. He instructed someone to call for the manor doctor and held her hand as they entered the house. After seeing the way her parents, elders, siblings and sister-in-law interacted with each other, she thought that she would be like that too. However, it turned out that it wasn't the case. Her heart was filled with sweetness and her face unconsciously flushed. She also secretly clenched her hands a little tighter. So, this couple who had been married for a few months entered the honeymoon period. Sure enough, it was just as Lady Zhao had thought. She was indeed pregnant. This was another happy event. She hurriedly went to inform her official mother and grandmother, as well as Zhao Shi's maternal family. The wife of the Honglu temple official looked forward to this granddaughter of hers as if she was looking forward to the stars and the moon. She was also worried that her daughter wouldn't be able to get pregnant for a long time. Now that there was someone else by her son-in-law's side, it couldn't be any better. However, now that she was pregnant, her son-in-law would need someone to take care of him and there would still be someone else by his side. Because of this, her joy was instantly diluted. However, after that, Zhao Shi's wet nurse whispered a few words into her ear. Madame Zhao immediately beamed with joy again. Is what you said true? At that time I was still somewhat dissatisfied with this marriage. However, because I was in the wrong and he was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, I had no choice but to reluctantly agree. Unexpectedly, my sister married the right person. That's our sister's luck. However, madam, there's something you don't know. Zhao Shi's wet nurse lowered her voice. The Jin princess consort doesn't like concubines and Tongfang. This matter is known by the entire Luo family. When they just returned from Jiangnan, the person in eldest young master's room was pregnant. Eldest young mistress revealed some of her emotions and was seen by the princess consort. Later on, old madam personally asked about it. That Tongfang has already been sent to the country house to await delivery. It looks like when the child is born she won't be able to follow the child back to the manor. This was naturally good news for the Luo family's main wives. It's just that the princess consort herself, it's hard to say what will happen in the future. Looking at the current situation, Jin Qinhuang treats her extremely well. Furthermore, with Jin Qinhuang's current situation, I'm afraid that he won't be able to have a Sufei in the future. He might not even have a concubine. After all, none of Jin Qinhuang's previous concubines have a title. Perhaps as long as they have a title they will be jinxed. Isn't that so? Who would have thought that Jin Qinhuang's fate would be so hard? I'm afraid that in the future, no one would dare to think of letting their family's young lady enter Jin Qinhuang Fu. In fact, it was exactly as Madame Zhao said. Power and riches, one must have that fate. If one couldn't even enter the door, then everything else was not worth a fart. Even if one was jinxed, being able to enter the door was also good. Even if one died, at least they would have a relationship with Jin Qinhuang. Then, more or less, they would be able to fight for some benefits from Jin Qinhuang. However, how many people would have the courage to use their lives to try? Jingwan only got up at night to eat something and then went back to bed to continue sleeping. The sky was dark and she didn't know what day it was. These days were simply depressing. The next day, Jingwan got up and regained her vitality. Then she realized one thing. According to a certain person's extreme degree, even if he were to enter the imperial palace in the future, the courtiers who wanted to give him a concubine in the imperial harem seemed to need quite a lot of courage. When he was still a Wangya, he could do it without being noticed. When he became the emperor, wouldn't it be even easier? Therefore, she didn't have to worry about facing courtiers or women. Not bad. After breakfast, Li Hongyuan received a summons from the imperial palace. He didn't need to think to know what it was for. It just so happened that he also needed to inform Lu Qingdi about going to live in the imperial residence. Li Hongyuan unhurriedly tidied up. When he was almost done, he leisurely entered the palace. On the way, the people he met all gave him sympathetic looks, including the palace maids and eunuchs. Li Hongyuan didn't care about this. He wouldn't regret what he had chosen. Moreover, he really loved her and couldn't extricate himself. Li Hongyuan even felt that he wouldn't feel anything even if other women took off their clothes. Just a eunuch dared to look at him like this. Li Hongyuan ignored the eunuch who was far away from him. However, the eunuch who was so close to him was courting death. Therefore, even if the eunuch was Lu Qingdi's eunuch, Li Hongyuan didn't hesitate to kick him. The eunuch spat out blood and fell to the ground. Seeing this, the onlookers kept quiet out of fear. They quickly put away all their thoughts and looked down, for fear of being noticed by the king of hell. Although Lu Qingdi didn't see it, he could see that his son was a little angry. Are you unhappy? Father, you should sort out the people around you. How dare a eunuch sympathize with me? Lu Qingdi understood. Anyone would be angry at this kind of thing. He turned his head and looked at the servants beside him. Get out of here. All of you are to receive 30 floggings. Also, inform the Imperial Household Department to change the servants outside for me. The eunuch didn't dare to object and went out trembling. He could only feel lucky that he wasn't sent back to the Imperial Household Department. Although he was a dog of the emperor, he could get whatever he wanted outside. Even the concubines had to be polite to him. He must have offended a lot of people. Once he fell, there would be a lot of people who wanted to trample him to death. However, he still hated them in his heart. A group of brainless people. Yuan-er. Lu Qingdi looked at Li Hongyuan and wanted to say something but stopped. If father wants to talk about yesterday's matter, then there's no need. This kind of thing I'm already used to it. It's enough that I have someone to sit in the position of Zhengfei. As for the rest, what's there to care about? I'm afraid you'll be in a difficult position, so I didn't do anything to a noble lady. If there's still someone chirping, then don't blame me for being impolite. Lu Qingdi's mouth twitched. This evil creature was really thick-skinned. How could he be defeated because of this? However, sleeping with a noble lady and then wiping his mouth and leaving, this kind of thing, even he, the emperor, didn't dare to do it. If you really do that, even if it's a memorial tablet, it has to be sent to Jin Wangfu. This seems to be a way to enter Jin Wangfu. Li Hongyuan sneered. If they have the guts, then try it. See if they have the ability. Enough, calm down a bit. Don't make trouble for father. Jin sees that you don't have an heir, so now there's no other way. I can only look at your wife's belly. It's already been a year. If it's still not enough, then let the imperial physician take a good look. Those who need to take medicine. Father worries too much. The Fu doctor has already examined me and Luosher. We're very well. We don't have a child, but it's just that fate hasn't arrived yet. When it should come, it will naturally come. I'm only 24 years old, very young. What's the hurry? Zhen worries for nothing. Do what you like. Zhen is too lazy to care about you. I want to live in the manor for a while. Asking for father's permission. Go, stay as long as you like. As long as this evil creature didn't cause trouble, Lu Qingdi would thank the heavens. I'll retire. Go. Li Hongyuan turned and left. This was the first time he entered the palace, but he only said a few words. On the way out of the palace, Li Hongyuan saw people from the Jade Palace. Li Hongyuan ignored them. That person also braced himself and chased after him. Prince, Imperial concubine Yang wants to see you. If you really don't want to see her, she has a few words. She wants this servant to inform Prince. Imperial concubine Yang is full of love and care. Prince, please. Li Hongyuan suddenly stopped and looked at the eunuch with an expressionless face. What do you want to say? Continue. When you're done, you can report to the underworld. The eunuch trembled. He didn't pass the message. Imperial concubine Yang was merciful. At most she would punish him. But the king of hell, Li Hongyuan, didn't want to stop for a moment longer. The eunuch could only watch as his back went further and further away. After Imperial concubine Su received the news, she didn't say anything and just closed her eyes. Lu Qingdi had also deliberately paid attention to this matter. He wanted to see if this son would go see his adoptive mother. Looking at it now, was there really no possibility of reconciliation? Did sixth son really have such a deep grudge against Su Shi for favoring third son? Or was there something he didn't know about? Lu Qingdi's eyes were dark. If it was the former, it didn't matter. If it was the latter, because there were many things in the manor, the things that needed to be brought were only some commonly used things. Moreover, it wasn't far. If he didn't bring anything, he could just let someone come back to get it. It was also very convenient. Jingwan had already given the order. Just as Li Hongyuan entered the palace, everything was almost ready. She was also accustomed to her husband's high efficiency in doing things in the palace. Then he left as soon as he said so. He walked quite confidently and didn't keep a low profile at all. As for whether or not people would think that Li Hongyuan was in a bad mood and went to the manor to relax, the people of Jin Wangfu wouldn't care. Just as Jingwan and the others settled down in the manor, Imperial concubine Su's biological mother entered the palace to see her. You already received a reply? That's great. Imperial concubine Su's eyes brightened a lot. However, it shouldn't be so fast. Don't tell me that something went wrong. Yang, don't worry. It's because the other party isn't far from the capital. That's why it's so fast. The time has already been set. It will be at 6:45 tomorrow. We can decide on the location. Imperial concubine Su felt that the traveling doctor was really bold. He dared to let them decide on the location and wasn't afraid that he wouldn't be able to return. However, Imperial concubine Su believed that since the other party dared to do so, he would definitely be able to escape. She felt pity in her heart. Why couldn't she use this kind of person? Then arrange for it to be in the Su family. Ben Gong will send someone to inform Ming her. Then this subject's wife will go back and arrange it. Good. Mother, thank you for your trouble. Nyang Nyang, what are you talking about? I gave birth to you and Prince is my grandson. Everything is what I should do. There's no need to say that it's troublesome. Old Madame Su might not be as wise as Old Madame Luo and Old Madame Sun, but she was self-aware and pragmatic. In short, she followed her children and did whatever they said. Imperial concubine Su smiled. Ming-er will be filial to you in the future. Everyone understood the meaning of these words. After becoming the emperor, bestowing rewards to the outer sect was a very normal thing. Good. I'm waiting. While the Su family was arranged here, Li Hongyuan was meeting the traveling doctor that Imperial concubine Su was thinking about. Since he traveled in the mountains and in the wild, he should be sloppy. In fact, he wasn't. Imperial concubine Su had seen him more than 30 years ago. He should be older, but he wasn't. The person who was playing chess and drinking tea with Li Hongyuan didn't look old. There were only some fine lines at the corners of his eyes and mouth. He didn't even have a beard, but his hair was all silver white. His clothes were clean and dustless. Even if the cloth wasn't particularly good, it showed an extraordinary temperament. He had a strong scholarly air and a faint medicinal fragrance. The two just played chess quietly and didn't speak. Jingwan wasn't in the room at the moment. He was feeding the big white ape. This white ape was tall and strong and looked very human-like. In fact, Jingwan didn't find it strange to see it in her husband's territory. After all, when they were at the White Dragon Temple, she was the one who had met him by the riverside. He could make up an excuse that he was saved by the white ape, and even make the white ape's master cooperate with him to put on a show. She should know that the white ape's master was at least related to her husband. After feeding the white ape, Jingwan was about to bring it around when Li Hongyuan and the traveling doctor came out. The white ape immediately ran to the traveling doctor's side. It waved its arms and legs and made a sound unique to apes. The traveling doctor gave a rare smile. This smile actually had some special flavor to it. Big White likes Princess very much. Alright, another bad naming. But perhaps he felt that this name was the most appropriate. It was indeed big and white. I also like Big White very much. I haven't seen such a human-like creature. Everyone would probably be very happy when others praised their beloved pet, and the traveling doctor was no exception. He took out a brocade pouch and handed it to Jingwan. It's just a small thing. It can refresh your mind and help you recover. It can help you avoid and cure common poisons. Jingwan took it. Thank you, sir. The traveling doctor nodded and prepared to leave. At this moment, Gongjiu happened to walk over. But seeing that his master had a guest, he didn't go forward. Unexpectedly, the traveling doctor's gaze landed on him, and he made a light sound of surprise. That little child, come forward. Although Gongjiu didn't know his exact age, he was still in his 20s. How could he be called a little child? But as a hidden guard, it was basic to keep a straight face. After Li Hongyuan nodded, he stepped forward. Greetings to your highness, Princess Consort. Greetings to sir. What instructions does sir have for me? You're much more polite than your master. A strange look flashed across Gongjiu's eyes. Sir knows my master? This was passed down to you by your master? The traveling doctor didn't say it directly but pointed to the item at his waist. That was a very inconspicuous accessory. It was only much better than normal accessories. Jingwan had seen it before. It was actually a set of silver needles. Gongjiu lowered his head to take a look, nostalgia flashing in his eyes. Master said that this was personally forged and given to him by his senior martial brother when he first started learning acupuncture. For tens of years, it had always been by his side. Before he died, he gave it to me. He's already dead. The traveling doctor's expressionless face finally showed a slight change. Yes, he had already passed away 12 years ago. The traveling doctor sighed softly. This set of needles was given to him by me. Later on, because of some differences in ideals, we separated and no longer had any contact. I didn't expect that it would be an eternal farewell. But thinking about it, it's not surprising. He had been stubborn since young. Are you working under Jin Qinhuang now? Yes. He probably didn't think that it would be the martial uncle that Shifu always talked about. But even so, Gongjiu still had a coffin face. The traveling doctor nodded. Since Jin Qinhuang has taken a fancy to you, it seems that your medical skills are still passable. Putting down the medicine basket on his back, he opened it. He didn't think that there was another universe inside. Below the middle of the basket, It was simply 100 medicine box. Of course, it was basically all ready-made medicines. Opening the 100 medicine box, there was also a black thread-bound book. He took it all out. This is my many years of experience in medicine. Originally, I wanted to find a disciple to pass on these, but I haven't met a suitable one, so I didn't deliberately look for one. Since I met you today, it should be fate. Gong Jiu hesitated. Martial uncle treats the world, but I only serve Wang Ye. I'm afraid that I can't inherit your aspirations. Don't worry. In the future, find a suitable disciple and pass on your medical skills. Take it. Gong Jiu still didn't take it. Instead, he looked at Jin Qinhuang. He served his master for a lifetime. There were some things that he couldn't decide by himself. Take it. Li Hongyuan said. This also meant that he agreed to Gong Jiu accepting a disciple in the future. Gong Jiu took it. Many thanks to Martial Uncle. If what Martial Uncle said was true, then he knew the value of these books better than anyone else. If he could thoroughly understand all of these books, then he could really be called a divine doctor. The traveling doctor waved his hand. But on account of your master, I don't want to accept a disciple. Keeping the things, the traveling doctor called out to Big White and then left. His speed was rather fast, not at all like an old man. He left so confidently. Who knew how many years he hadn't heard from his junior martial brother? When he found out that the other party had died, he only sighed. He didn't ask how he was when he was alive, nor where he was buried. If he really didn't care, then was he willing to give his life's work to the other party's disciple? This kind of person really didn't know how to evaluate. However, the person who left behind didn't intend to say much. Gong Jiu, you were preparing to find Ben Wang just now? What's the matter? This subordinate is currently concocting a type of medicine and wants to enter the mountains to search for it. This subordinate asks for master's permission. How long will it take? Whether or not you can find it, you must return within 3 days. Proved. Many thanks, Your Highness. Hidden guards were all action-oriented. Gong Jiu might have originally intended to leave directly, but now that he had obtained a few treasures, he definitely had to put them away properly first. After Gong Jiu left. This word fate is really hard to say, Jingwan said with a smile. Li Hongyuan responded indifferently. Ah Yuan, why did that gentleman come to see you? He wants to enter the capital to repay a favor from who knows how many years ago. He happened to pass by and came to take a look. Repay a favor? Who is the other party? To be able to make this seemingly powerful old gentleman owe a favor, the other party was also very powerful. However, he couldn't remember how many years it had been, so perhaps it wasn't as heavy as expected. I know the way his keepsake was passed down. I've always had people watching over it, but just in case there was no movement in the past. A few days ago, the Su family went and old Madame Su entered the palace on that day. Jingwan understood who it was. That old gentleman doesn't even remember the time. I'm afraid he doesn't know who the other party is. Did A Yuan tell him? Why should I tell him? It doesn't matter whether he does it or not. Because Li Hongyuan knew what the result would be. Since Li Hongyuan had decided to do it, Jingwan naturally believed in him. Who is noble consort Su doing this favor to? Needless to say, of course, it's her precious son. Who else can it be except for the first time? Mr. Yu wouldn't do anything that goes against his morals. So he definitely wouldn't kill anyone. Could it be that she wants to give birth to a child for Prince Rui? You're half right. In fact, it's Li Hongming who can't have a child. Jingwan was surprised. I asked someone to drug him. Jingwan blinked. This method of ending his son's life was really vicious. However, it was just giving him a taste of his own medicine. When did it happen? Why didn't I know? It happened before we got married. Of course you don't know. Speaking of which, it was your fourth sister who drugged him. Jingwan really didn't know what to say. Someone really made use of everything that could be used. She could totally think of a reason to persuade her fourth sister to drug him. She lost her child and couldn't have a child. Naturally, she would take revenge fiercely. https://11/11807109526990. Chapter 468. Jingwan could only say, Wang Yi, you can do it, you can do it. Looking at a certain person's attitude, that drug probably couldn't be cured. Even that awesome traveling doctor didn't seem to be able to cure it. And she wanted to see what kind of expression noble consort Su would have when she found out about this, and what she would do afterwards. It would probably be another exciting show, the kind that definitely couldn't be missed. However, she couldn't care so much right now. Right now was the time for them husband and wife to enjoy themselves. Even if Jing City was turned upside down, it had nothing to do with them. Ayuan. Jingwan smiled like a flower as she held onto Li Hongyuan's arm. Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows in question. In a few days it will be the 3rd of the 3rd month. Ah, it's the 1st day of the 7th month. What's wrong? Li Hongyuan still looked confused. You want to go out and play? Or do you want to see how those rich and powerful families in Jing City play the winding stream? Jingwan rolled her eyes at him. That thing is the same everywhere. There's nothing strange about it. I mean, we've been married for a year. There's a phrase called wedding anniversary. Her husband's IQ was so high he should know, right? Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan's hopeful little eyes. How could he not understand? However, he had the mischievous urge to tease Jingwan. He didn't show it on his face, but his tone was indifferent, just like the anniversary of a dead person's death. Li Hongyuan Jingwan flew into a rage out of humiliation and slapped him hard on the arm. Not far away, whether it was the guards or the servant girls, it was the first time that they had heard Wang Fei angrily call Wang Yi by his full name. They didn't know what Wang Yi had done to make Wang Fei so angry. However, they didn't dare to meddle in the matters between the two masters. They lowered their heads and looked down, but their ears couldn't help pricking up. In any case, it was Wang Yi who had angered Wang Fei. Wang Yi must be coaxing Wang Fei now and didn't have the time to pay attention to them. Wang Fei had never indiscriminately vented her anger on them. This was completely different from when His Highness was angry. If His Highness was angry, the evil fire would definitely not be directed at Her Highness. If they were not careful, they would be in trouble. Therefore, at that time they would hide as much as they could. If they could not hide, they would tuck their tails between their legs and reduce their presence. The King of Hell also knew that he had really pissed off his wife this time. Wan. Humph. Jingwan glared at him angrily. She shook off his hand and turned to leave. Our King of Hell was a little embarrassed now. The most important thing now was to coax his wife back. Wan, your husband was wrong. Don't be angry, okay? Wan. Even if there were many people around, Li Hongyuan was not embarrassed at all. If he said he would apologize, then he would really apologize. There was no ambiguity. What was the use of the dignity of a prince? What was the use of face? Could it not make his wife not angry? Jingwan was now in a fit of anger. She didn't pay attention to him and didn't pay attention to the reactions of others. Jingwan was angry, but she didn't sulk. She did what she needed to do and found something to do when she had nothing to do. Li Hongyuan followed beside her the entire time. He was attentive and submissive. When Jingwan was trimming the flowers, he handed her the scissors. When Jingwan was washing her hands, he handed her a handkerchief. When Jingwan was drinking tea, he first stirred it and waited until the temperature was right before giving it to her. When Jingwan was painting, he helped her grind and mix the colors. However, the colors he made were very pleasing to Jingwan. In short, no matter what Jingwan was doing, he would always have a foot in it. Jingwan called for a maidservant. When he swept his eyes over her, the maidservant could only stand in place and not dare to come forward. She looked pitifully at Wang Fei. The only thing missing was "I beg Wang Fei for mercy" written on her face. In the end, Jingwan was annoyed by Li Hongyuan until she didn't have a temper. Wang Yi, you are still a Qin Wang. Don't you find it embarrassing? With this person's face, it would be strange if she really got angry with him. As long as Wan isn't angry, it doesn't matter if this husband loses a bit of face. Li Hongyuan said with a smile. He was very pure. Jingwan narrowed her eyes. Now she understood. This man did it on purpose. He purposely let people see how excessive and arrogant this Wang Fei was. He, a Qin Wang, had done this and she still didn't let it go. How unreasonable was she? If it was any other family, this kind of daughter-in-law would have already been dealt with. Not to mention the husband disdaining her, from the parents-in-law elders to the youngest aunts, youngest uncles, and even the younger generation, they would all criticize her. Alright, even though this might be the truth, but even if this person did it on purpose, there was no reason for it. Jingwan suddenly laughed. Marrying a husband like Wang Yi, should I say that I have accumulated 8 lifetimes worth of fortune? Should I thank the heavens and earth and thank the gods and Buddhas? Should I live a good life and not make trouble for nothing? Li Hongyuan's expression changed and his eyes darkened for a moment. He went forward and hugged Jingwan. It is me who has accumulated 8 lifetimes worth of fortune by marrying you. However, I won't thank anyone but you. Thank you for appearing, thank you for coming to my side. Won, don't be angry, okay? This husband will do anything. At this moment, even if she didn't think about it, Jingwon was 100% certain that her husband had a secret in his heart. No matter what the secret was, as long as his feelings for her were real, then she wouldn't ask. Perhaps one day he would tell her. Just like how she also had a secret, she didn't really care about it. Just like how she had already exposed a lot of herself in front of him. They were the most intimate people from body to heart, so it would be too tiring for her to be careful all the time. Therefore, she knew that some of her words and actions in front of him had already crossed the line and were not tolerated by the world. She believed in him and he had never disappointed her. As smart as he was, he should have realized it long ago. The only thing he lacked was to break through that layer of window paper. If he asked, she would tell him. And everyone was tacitly waiting for the other party to ask. Jingwon stepped back and reached out to pinch a certain someone's face. She smiled. Is Wang Yi finally done playing? What do you mean by playing? This husband sincerely wants to apologize to Won. Like this? It's fine if you want me to not be angry. On the 3rd day of the 3rd month you can arrange it. If this princess is satisfied, then I will forgive you. If not, humph. Won, won't you give me a hint or something? The king of hell's face was a little distressed. No, Wang Yi is so wise, I believe that there is nothing that can stump Wang Yi. This princess is quite optimistic about Wang Yi. Alright then, just wait. Li Hongyuan touched Jingwon's nose with a little doting and a little helpless. Jingwon suddenly really looked forward to it. Then what does Won want to do now? Continue painting or go out for a walk? Perhaps this husband will take you hunting? Jingwon was naturally interested in hunting, but Jingwon was actually more concerned about other things. I see that Yuan is very good at mixing colors. Is Yuan's painting also good? Let me see it. Alright, this husband will let you see it. This husband is an all-rounder anyway. It's just painting, it's nothing. A certain someone's face was thick, but since he dared to say it, then he was basically able to do it. The paper used for freehand brushwork was different from the paper used for fine brushwork. Jingwon had actually asked people to improve the paper used for fine brushwork many times. Although she didn't know how to make paper, the Luo family actually had a master who specialized in making paper. If she told them what she wanted, they would always find a way to change it. At this time, she quickly put away the paper she painted on and laid out a piece of uncooked xian paper instead of the half-cooked one. Of course, this was named by Jingwon according to her previous life. These two kinds of paper were actually called xian paper and half-cooked xian paper. Later on, when she came up with fine brushwork, Jingwon changed the name without permission. But this was a small matter, so there was no need to care about it. Just paint a landscape, isn't it very simple? Li Hongyuan raised his eyebrows, but he didn't comment. The characteristics of uncooked xian paper were that it was highly absorbent and permeable. It melted when it came in contact with water, and it was easy to produce rich ink changes. It could receive the artistic effect of water dizziness and ink movement. It permeated quickly and was not easy to master. Therefore, people generally liked to use half-cooked xian paper to paint landscapes. Half-cooked xian paper slowly melted when it came in contact with water. It had the ink changes, but it was not too permeable. It was easy to master the drying, wiping, dotting and dyeing. It could express rich feelings in ink. Jingwon wanted to let Li Hongyuan use uncooked xian to paint landscapes, so naturally, it was more to test his foundation. At the beginning, Jingwon didn't take out the half-cooked xian paper. It could be seen that she didn't think that Li Hongyuan knew fine brushwork at all. His wife wanted to test him but also looked down on him. Li Hongyuan was very relaxed and casual. After adjusting the ink, he wantonly without thinking or pausing. It was enough to show that he had a card up his sleeve. The paper was not big to begin with. Li Hongyuan didn't intend to use other colors. It was purely an ink landscape painting. Therefore he painted quite quickly. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was dazzling to describe. Anyway, in Jingwon's opinion, he finished painting while she was looking at it attentively. He also inscribed a word. He didn't print it, but he drew a word on it. That was the only bright color in the whole painting. It's done. Princess, please have a look. Li Hongyuan put down the brush with a smile. Jingwon looked at the person, then at the painting, then at the person and then at the painting again. Then she silently turned around. The sadness in her heart was like a river flowing against the current. She still had basic artistic cultivation and she still had basic appreciation. Damn, this level was simply at the level of a master or even a master. How could it be such a blow to her? What happened to being useless except for his appearance? He seemed to be able to defeat her grandfather in chess. His handwriting made everyone praise him endlessly. Now even his painting was at the level of a master. In the art of war he crushed He Jihai in all kinds of ways. He Jihai might not have learned it at the beginning, but he was still quite good at fighting. Later he slowly improved. However, Jingwan didn't see him last long under someone's hands. He could casually pick up mountains and rivers, and he could easily pick up a collection of classics and histories. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that he was erudite and knowledgeable. Although he was in the capital, he knew about the affairs of the world. Others were worried about things, but he could casually come up with a few plans. Strategizing in a tent to determine victory from 1,000 miles away. If she didn't summarize, she wouldn't know. She felt that she was completely a slag. Such a man was actually said to be useless. Such people were all worthless. Looking at the whole world, it would be hard to find a few people who worked successful, let alone perfect and flawless. They were all scum. This was simply the most ridiculous rumor that Jingwan had heard in her previous life. Who exactly made up this damn rumor? Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan, who seemed to be shrouded in darkness and gloominess. He seemed to have accidentally hit his wife. Li Hongyuan was reflecting on himself. Did he use too much strength? In fact, he should have used 30% of his strength. His wife was too fragile. He should really take good care of her. Once again, Li Hongyuan accidentally blurted out what was on his mind. Jingwan turned around and looked at him gloomily. Shut up. How could he be so arrogant? Could he be more shameless? Li Hongyuan laughed and pulled Jingwan over. Whether your husband is useful or not, talented or not, he's all yours, right? You're the only one who can have him. No one else can even dream about having him. Jingwan expressed that she liked hearing these words. Her heart was slippery. She reached out and poked Li Hongyuan's chest. Tell me, who exactly said that you're useless? Tell me, I promise I won't beat him to death. Li Hongyuan sighed. Wanwan, you're a girl. Don't be so cruel. Alright, if a certain someone didn't do it himself, how could an outsider hide his edge? Li Hongyuan kissed the top of her head. Come Wanwan, teach your husband how to paint. Do you still need me to teach you? Even if he wanted to mock her, he didn't have to go overboard. Li Hongyuan knocked on her forehead. What are you thinking about again? Seriously, you're getting more and more foolish. Seeing a certain someone put on a painting again, Jingwan also understood. Sure enough, the blow just now was too harsh and her reaction was slow. However, it's also your fault that I'm foolish. She was raised to the point that she didn't have to use her brain at all. How could she not be foolish? Alright, it's my fault. I'll take responsibility until the end. From the beginning, didn't he work hard to raise his wife into a fool? Who wants to become a fool? From today onwards, you have to give me at least half of your work first. When I make a decision, you can add more. When it came to mental work, what could be better than doing those things? As you wish. He couldn't ask for more. Anyway, with him in control, he didn't have to worry about tiring her out. With this kind of obedience, Jingwan had the misconception that she was being pushed to the side. So, no matter what, she was a loser to him. So, she was being crushed in everything. For a moment, Jingwan's mood was not in a good mood. Your Highness's talent is extraordinary. I reckon that you should understand how to draw based on the paintings this concubine has drawn in the past. I think you don't need this concubine to teach you. She was temperamental and changed her face faster than flipping a book. Li Hongyuan accepted it well. His wife was really lively now. Compared to when they first met, she was always mature and steady. This was more in line with what a 16-year-old woman should be like. Li Hongyuan completely ignored the appearance of a married woman. Rather than saying that Li Hongyuan was raising a wife, it was better to say that he was raising a daughter. Of course, when he really had a daughter, that child probably wouldn't receive this kind of treatment. Li Hongyuan's attainments in meticulous brushwork were originally very deep. At this time he was self-taught, hiding his inadequacies. It was simple. Jingwan quietly watched him draw. The side of his face was still perfect. At this moment there was a quiet and peaceful aura around him. He was so beautiful that he didn't seem like a real person. Just looking at him like this, she gradually became entranced. And she didn't know when it started, but Jingwan began to reflect on herself in her heart. It seemed that she was really becoming more and more foolish. It was as if she could get angry or laugh at trivial matters. It seemed that after so many years in Cheat and Fu, her younger self was not like this. Jingwon helplessly smiled and sighed softly. Li Hongyuan turned his head. It was obviously because he heard her voice. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." She stood up and walked forward. Just now she was outside the painting, but in the blink of an eye she was inside the painting. The two of them spent half a day in the study. There was no romance, no lingering, no whispering. There was only peace and warmth. Occasionally they would whisper to each other, but from beginning to end, there was a kind of intimacy that others couldn't get in between. At this time, these two masters were the easiest to serve, because they didn't need to be served at all. The next day, Jingwon changed into a simple set of clothes and prepared to go hunting with Li Hongyuan. On the other side, the travel doctor went to the Su family at the request of the Su family. However, compared to yesterday, his attire was very different. There was more beard and wrinkles on his face. His clothes were also more ordinary. Overall, he looked like the kind of person who couldn't be picked out if thrown into a crowd. If they met again, Jingwon probably wouldn't even look at him. And that more recognizable white ape was not by his side. Prince Rue and Princess Rue were already waiting at the Su family. Probably because they wanted to hide their identities, the two sides didn't meet face to face. The travel doctor didn't say anything and directly took the pulse. The speed of taking the pulse was faster than usual. He didn't even change his hand. He inserted a needle and asked a few questions before giving a conclusion. Poison sterilization powder. Other than sterilization powder, it doesn't affect the body. Under normal circumstances, there won't be any problems. Sterilization powder doesn't guarantee sterilization. If you're lucky, there's a very small chance of getting a child. If you have one, it's like heaven is only looking after you. If you have two, it's like heaven is looking after you for 10 lifetimes. With that, the travel doctor stood up decisively, picked up his medicine box and prepared to leave. As expected, the travel doctor was definitely stopped. In reality, even if he was mentally prepared for such a result, Li Hongming's face was still terrifyingly dark. He didn't hide anymore and directly walked out. "Doctor, is what you said true?" The travel doctor didn't seem to be angry or have any emotions of being trapped. "Since you already believe it, why ask so much?" What kind of person was Li Hongming? To be treated with such disrespect by a mere traveling doctor, coupled with the fact that there was a problem with his body, he was naturally enraged. However, his last hope might lie with the other party. In the end, he suppressed his anger. "Doctor, is there a cure?" "There's no cure." The travel doctor had never been interested in such sinister things and wasn't interested in researching. After all, this kind of thing couldn't be touched by normal people. Even among the rich and powerful, there were only a few who could touch it. Hence why bother? If he had the time, he might as well use it to help more people who really needed help. "Doctor, your favor is just to take someone's pulse? Isn't that too cheap?" Li Hongming couldn't control the expression on his face. The travel doctor was unmoved. "If it wasn't because it was troublesome, would you need this old man's help?" That's right, the truth was as such. However, Imperial Consort Su used this opportunity mostly because she wanted to solve the problem. Of course, if there was no problem with her son, it would naturally be best. She would take it as an opportunity in exchange for peace of mind. Although she felt some heartache for losing the opportunity, it was better than being paranoid all day long. Now that there was really a problem, she naturally hoped that it could be solved. In the end, the other party just found out where the problem was and wanted to leave? How could that be? "Doctor, is there really no way to solve it?" "You better think carefully before answering." Li Hongming's words already revealed a strong threat. "Since that's the case, then this prince can only apologize. After all, you know that this matter is very important to this prince, and definitely can't let outsiders know about it. Hence, I have to trouble you, doctor." The moment Li Hongming finished speaking, the people blocking the way were no longer the Su family, but the guards that Li Hongming brought. "However, doctor, don't worry. Even if you can't solve this prince's problem, this prince still thinks highly of your medical skills. Hence, if you stay in Prince Rue's residence, this prince will guarantee you a high position and wealth. You won't have to live in the open anymore. Even if doctor likes to study all kinds of herbs, this prince can satisfy you." Even if he was forcefully holding someone down, Li Hongming still habitually displayed a respectful attitude. The travel doctor, who had been indifferent since he came in, suddenly revealed a smile. Li Hongming didn't understand what was going on. Then he felt his limbs go weak and his eyelids became heavy. Before he completely lost consciousness, he seemed to hear the travel doctor's words. "Your Highness is really magnanimous. Forcing a doctor to do something against his will, and you still expect him to serve you? Aren't you afraid of throwing his life away? However, Your Highness isn't the first person to do this to this old man. Your Highness must remember this lesson in the future." After the travel doctor finished speaking, he looked at the people who had collapsed on the ground. He dusted his sleeves, picked up his medicine box and left unhurriedly. Just as noble Consort Su said, if this person didn't have means to protect himself, how could he allow others to determine the location of the meeting? It wasn't that noble Consort Su didn't warn Li Hongming previously, but Li Hongming didn't take it seriously at all. He treated the travel doctor as someone like an imperial physician and underestimated his abilities. He also overestimated his position in these people's hearts. He thought that as a mere commoner, they definitely wouldn't dare to do anything to him, a prince of the imperial court. In the end, he failed miserably. The travel doctor swaggered out of the Su family just like that. Even if the servants saw him, they didn't dare to stop him. The travel doctor didn't use too much force. After he left for less than a quarter of an hour, the people in the room gradually woke up. Li Hongming's expression was terrifyingly gloomy. He was very clear that he was really careless this time. If the other party harbored evil intentions, then he would die without knowing why. Even if he suffered at the hands of Li Hongyuan, it wasn't as big as this. However, he didn't dare to make a big fuss about this matter. Not to mention that the other party's methods were unpredictable and had something on him. He naturally didn't find anything in the end. He didn't even find a similar person. In the end, Li Hongming left the Su residence with a gloomy face and entered the palace to see Imperial Consort Su. After receiving the final result, noble Consort Su's expression wasn't much better than Li Hongming's. At this moment she truly felt that this was retribution, or rather revenge. Why couldn't it be anything else but sterilization powder, sterilization powder? Did I ask you when you were poisoned? After all, there hadn't been any good news from Prince Rui's residence for more than a year. It wasn't a long time, but it wasn't a short time either. Therefore, any time could be when he was poisoned. It was basically impossible to find the culprit based on his own deductions. Li Hongming's face stiffened. "Mother, please forgive me." Noble Consort Su restrained herself and didn't throw the teacup in her hand. "Ming-er, what do you want Mother to say about you? You were careless and didn't even know when you were poisoned. Now you've lost your cool and didn't take my words to heart. You're like this, what kind of great undertaking are you trying to achieve? You're simply... Urchin's heirs are all gone. What's the point of scheming? It's better to... shut up." Noble Consort Su shouted sternly. Her suppressed anger completely exploded because of Prince Rui's anger. She almost smashed the teacup on Li Hongming's head. It's better to what? If we're not trying to achieve the throne, it's better for all of us to end our own lives now. In any case, we're all going to die in the end. Prince Rui's body swayed. He took a deep breath and barely managed to stabilize his mind. "My apologies, Mother." Aken didn't know what to do for a moment. "Didn't that doctor also say that it's not that you can't have children? You're definitely someone favored by the heavens. In a few days, announce to the public that your wife is pregnant again. She's already been pregnant for more than a month. In 9 months she'll definitely give birth to your eldest son. As for those absurd things you've done to women recently, stop them for this consort. Just do what you did in the past and what you did in the future. Sweep your tail clean. You know what the consequences will be if there's a slip-up in this matter." Prince Rui already understood his mother's intentions. She was faking her pregnancy, but he was still unwilling to accept it. "Mother, Aken will work harder." "Perhaps." "Shut up. You've worked hard for so long, but have there been any results? Not only have there been none, but you're also in such a bad state. Were your imperial father and court officials blind back then? If you continue like this, your imperial father will be completely disappointed in you and the court officials supporting you will be disappointed. At that time, even if you give birth to a son, what can you do? Once the dust settles, you'll have plenty of time to give birth." Prince Rui knew that noble Consort Su was telling the truth. He really didn't have time to waste on women. The matter at hand was the most important, and his mother's method was indeed the most appropriate. Although there was a great risk involved, after all, if they were discovered, none of them would be able to escape. Moreover, there would be no possibility of turning the situation around. After all, mixing up the imperial bloodline was a serious crime. Aken will listen to mother. That's for the best. Noble consort Su closed her eyes. You can go back first. Yes, Aken will take his leave. After Li Hongming left, noble consort Su's face was full of malevolence. For the first time she completely lost her demeanor. She viciously smashed the hall to vent the depression in her heart. With the sterilization powder, there's still a chance of giving birth. On noble consort Su's face, it was unknown whether she was rejoicing at this possibility or hating it. When her adopted son was in the early stages of puberty, she had someone give him the sterilization powder. Therefore, for so many years, there had been countless women around him, but there had never been any good news. She wasn't the least bit surprised about this. Her adopted son didn't want his son's mother to have a low status, so he didn't let those women give birth, which just happened to save a lot of trouble. In the end, she only found out today that the sterilization powder couldn't completely sterilize a child. No matter how low the probability was, it meant that her adopted son could have a child at any time. Then what was the point of her doing so much? She treated her adopted son wholeheartedly. She completely believed that she treated him as her own, no different from her other two children. It had always been like this. Now a huge crack appeared in this mother-son relationship. She couldn't help but want to drug him again and kill Madame Luo. At this moment she was rejoicing that her adopted son had such a strong destiny. The fewer women around him, the easier it would be to clean things up. Fine, since Madame Luo was jealous, then she would help her and completely confirm that her adopted son was a jinx to all the women close to him. Other than Madame Luo, who was very compatible with his destiny, it was best if there wasn't another one. Therefore, there was no doubt that the topic of Li Hongyuan jinx his wife had not dissipated to begin with, but now it had reached a new level. When Li Hongyuan received the news, he didn't care at all. No matter what that woman Madame Su's intentions were, she had truly helped him. However, Jingwan didn't understand what noble consort Su wanted to do. At this moment, Li Hongyuan didn't hide anything and directly told Jingwan about the sterilization powder. Every time Jingwan thought of her husband's encounter, she felt extremely distressed, even if noble consort Su didn't succeed. Because noble consort Su thought that she had successfully drugged you, it was better for me not to have a child for the time being. Now, since she already knows that it's actually possible for her to be pregnant, is it possible that she will do something crazy? Something crazy? I'll make her really crazy. Li Hongyuan heavily dropped the chess piece in his hand. In this life, Madame Su indeed didn't succeed because he knew, so he avoided it. However, in his previous life he was indeed poisoned with the sterilization powder. Although it wasn't complete sterilization, it was close. The only possibility was indeed infinitely close to zero. When he learned about this from Madame Su, he never thought that he would have an heir. However, in the end he had a son, and it was the woman he loved who gave birth to him. Sometimes he felt that he was indeed favored by the heavens. After all, they had only been in love once. However, it just so happened that the heavens took her away. Li Hongyuan looked at Jingwan. Because of the sterilization powder, it once again evoked deep dark memories in his heart. At this moment his memories and reality were even a little chaotic, making him a little unable to distinguish between them. One moment, it seemed like the current her with a smile, and the next moment, it seemed like she was emaciated and on her last breath, holding the child with the last bit of strength in her hands and giving it to him while telling him, "Your Highness, the child is yours." Even at that time, Li Hongyuan didn't know the full effects of the sterilization powder, but he never doubted that the child was his, nor did he suspect that Jingwan deliberately lied to him for the sake of the child's better life. At that time he was holding the child in one hand and holding her tightly in the other. There wasn't the slightest expression on his face. He just kept muttering, "Don't die, don't die, don't die." Later, after Li Hongyuan went through that period of time, he clearly knew that he was really on the verge of collapse and madness during that period of time. What allowed him to hold on was perhaps Jingwan's dying prayer, or perhaps she saw through his state, so in the end she kept reminding him. His good imperial father originally didn't want his life, but in the end he personally chopped him up, really chopped him up. He did not let go of any of the people who came into contact with him. The entire palace was filled with the stench of blood. It was as if no matter how much he washed, it would not be clean. At that time no one could wake him up. In the end someone carried his son to him. The child was crying and he seemed to hear Jingwan's voice again. It was no wonder that he was so familiar with carrying a child now. In fact, that child had been personally taken care of by him for a long time and never left his side. Ayuan, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me, Ayuan. Li Hongyuan came back to his senses. In front of him was the delicate and beautiful Wan, his legitimate wife. She was still alive and well, and now she was looking at him with a face full of worry. Li Hongyuan reached out and hugged her tightly in his arms. Wan, I won't let anyone hurt you. Absolutely not. If anyone dares to touch a single strand of your hair, I'll make them regret living in this world. Jingwan didn't care about this now. She just wanted to know what happened to her husband. In that moment just now, it was as if he was a demon god who walked out of hell on a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. It was so terrifying that it made people tremble. However, Jingwan was really worried about him. His face was as pale as paper and his temples were wet with sweat. He was in a very bad state. I'm fine. I just thought of something and was a little bewitched for a moment. Don't worry. It was really too scary just now. How could Jingwan not be worried? Then let Gongjio take a look at you. If it could make her feel at ease, he would just take her pulse. However, Li Hongyuan kept Jingwan in his arms. He hadn't completely recovered yet. Without her, he might continue to be affected by negative emotions. Jingwan didn't intend to leave. She stroked his back again and again. Gongjio came quickly. When he saw Li Hongyuan's state, he knew that his master's situation was not rare. Eunuch Mu, who was on the side, knew better. Since his master was 10 years old, he would be in this state several times a year. At the beginning it was relatively frequent, almost every month. Later it gradually decreased. However, since he was engaged to the princess, he basically didn't see her again. Unexpectedly, he had a relapse today and it was fierce. In fact, Li Hongyuan was quite dangerous now. He was harmless only to Jingwan. Gongjio endured the fear brought by his master and felt Li Hongyuan's pulse as calmly as possible. Then he silently stepped back. Your Highness, Prince is fine. He will be fine after a rest. Jingwan still wanted to ask for more details. Li Hongyuan kissed her to attract her attention. He said with a smile, I said he was fine. Wan, you don't believe me? Knowing that he was not in a good state, Jingwan didn't argue with him. The people around them consciously left and didn't dare to disturb them. Li Hongyuan was much better now, but he couldn't fully recover so soon. In fact, he had mixed feelings about his son in his previous life. On the one hand, he was the only one left by Jingwan with their bloodline. But at the same time, he also knew that Jingwan had to bear such a big burden in her body in the end because of that child. He even thought that if it weren't for that child, Jingwan might not die. Except for the beginning, he gave the child the best. But the relationship between father and son was not close. That you're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.